Chapter 1195, The Dragon Race Must Not Bow Down. Chapter 1195, The Dragon Race Must Not Bow Down. Elder Scorpion praised internally. Although Wu Xie's challenge seemed reckless, it was actually a win-win situation. Wu Xie was one of the top paragons of the Void Reversion realm in the clan. Otherwise, he would not have been qualified to accompany Elder Scorpion and travel outside. If both parties were to fight, it would be best if Wu Xie could take the opportunity to kill Long Zhu. That would be revenge for the young master. If the two of them were in a stalemate, he could stand out and accuse the dragon race after a few rounds. If Long Zhu could not even suppress Wu Xie within a few rounds, how could he kill the young master of the witch race? The dragon race schemed against the young master of the witch race and even hid the truth intentionally. If those two facts were true, it would be enough for the witch race to wage war. At that time, there was no way the dragon race would wage war against the witch race for the sake of a remnant beast. Is there a need for a life and death battle? Illumination Dragon Elder 4 frowned slightly and asked. Elder Scorpion asked with a fake smile, "This is an affair between the juniors, what are you worried about? Feeling guilty? Haha." Illumination Dragon Elder 4 roared in laughter and cursed the latter as an idiot internally. He was worried. However, he was not worried about Su Zimo. Instead, he was worried that Wu Xie would be killed by Su Zimo with a single move. At that time, if another witch were to die in this hall in front of everyone, the situation might turn even worse. Since the dragon race has no objections, there are some things we have to make clear beforehand. Elder Scorpion said in a deep voice, "Since it's a fight between the younger generation, as seniors, there's no need for us to interfere. What do you guys think?" "Of course." The Blue Dragon Elder nodded. "All right." Elder Scorpion glanced sideways. "Wu Xie, go on." Wu Xie walked out slowly with an arrogant expression and shouted at Su Zimo, "Bastard, why aren't you saying anything? Are you afraid? Don't be hasty." Su Zimo smiled gently. "I'll send you on your way right now to meet your young master." Before his sentence was finished, Su Zimo's blood chi burst forth and he arrived before Wu Xie in a flash with a torrential aura, as though a god of death had descended. "You." Wu Xie's expression changed starkly. He had not expected Su Zimo to be this strong and possess such ferocious speed that the voids trembled wherever he passed. It was too fast. How terrifying was Su Zimo's blood chi and physique. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and fusing it with dragon blood, a full power burst could cover dozens of feet in an instant. The moment Wu Xie relaxed his guard in the hall, Su Zimo had already arrived before him. Poof! A single punch. Wu Xie's head exploded on the spot and his essence spirit was destroyed. Long Tsang's eyelids twitched. Apart from Elder 4 of the Illumination Dragon lineage, the other 4 elders were stunned as well. Elder Scorpion was about to sit back on his chair and watch the battle properly. However, he did not expect that the battle would end before he even sat down. Wu Xie, who was still alive earlier on, had turned into a headless corpse. Elder Scorpion planned everything. In fact, he was prepared for how he was going to interfere if Wu Xie was disadvantaged. However, he had not expected Wu Xie to be killed in a single round. Or rather, this could only be considered as half a round and Wu Xie did not even manage to retaliate. In reality, if he were to increase the distance between them, Wu Xie would be on guard and it would be difficult for him to be killed in a single move unless Su Zimo used any major killing moves. Wu Xie possessed the bloodline of the witch race after all. As long as he attacked with his full strength and released many secret skills of the witch race, he would be able to defend against Su Zimo's attacks. Alas! He no longer had a chance. If he said that he would kill with a single move, he would definitely make sure there was no need for a second attack. Elder Scorpion glared at Su Zimo coldly. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 came to Su Zimo's side and shielded him. "I just reminded you not to engage in any life and death battles." Elder Scorpion closed his eyes for a long time before letting out a long breath. Dragon race, aren't you going to give me an explanation? What explanation do you want? Who can you blame if that person wants to die? Illumination Dragon Elder 4 sneered. Elder Scorpion shook his head. I don't care about the process. I only know that the young master of my race died in your Dragon Bone Valley for no reason. I came to demand an explanation, yet you guys killed another of my clansmen. Everyone, what do you think the witch race will do if word of this spreads? Elder Scorpion said sternly, does the dragon race intend to wage war against the witch race for the sake of a remnant beast with an impure bloodline? Apart from Elder 4 of the Illumination Dragon lineage, the elders of the other 4 lineages fell silent. The Horned Dragon Elder, Long Zhong, had a feud with Su Zimo to begin with. That was secondary. The elders of the other 3 lineages did not have much feelings towards Su Zimo either. Su Zimo had only entered the Dragon Bone Valley for 11 years. Was it worth it to wage war against the witch race for a remnant beast that merely entered the Dragon Bone Valley 11 years ago? That was ridiculous. Although the dragon race was indeed protective of their own, they would not be so unwise. Actually, Long Zhu's bloodline is impure and he did not have the chance to enter the Dragon Bone Valley initially. Long Zhong said, we already did him a huge favor allowing him to cultivate in the Dragon Bone Valley. Who knew what he would go on to get into big trouble again? There's truly no reason for us to have bad blood with the witch race for the sake of a remnant beast. The Blue Dragon, Winged Dragon and Hornless Dragon elders were tempted as well. Bullshit. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 had a fiery temper and shouted, even if his bloodline is impure, he's still the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage. No one can let him die. Illumination Elder 4, do you think you can shoulder the responsibility of implicating the entire dragon race because of a remnant beast? Long Zhong shouted. Fuck your mother. Do you want to fight? Illumination Dragon Elder 4 cursed. You. Long Zhong soared up with a murderous aura as well. Interesting, interesting. Elder Scorpion rubbed his palms and laughed. The fact that the dragon race can fight because of a remnant beast is truly a rare sight for the primordial 9 races. Alright, both of you, quiet down. You'll be a joke to others. The Blue Dragon Elder frowned. After a moment of silence, he glanced sideways and asked, Long Tsang, what do you think? No. Long Tsang glanced at Su Zimo and said firmly, he's not an ordinary remnant. He's the number 1 of the hidden dragon ranking. How can he be used to repay a life? The dragon race must not bow down. As a 5-clawed divine dragon, Long Tsang's words carried a lot of weight. Even if he was on opposing ends with Su Zimo, there were some things he was clear about. No matter what, you guys owe the witch race an explanation. Elder Scorpion said, our young master and another clansman died in the hands of a remnant beast. Does the dragon race want me to return empty-handed? The Blue Dragon Elder asked, what do you want? Elder Scorpion said indifferently, since that's the case, I'll take a compromise. Slay that person's right arm and I'll take it back to the witch race with an explanation. The Blue Dragon Elder and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief. A compromise on both parties with just a lost arm on Long Zhu. At the same time, a war with the witch race could be avoided. This was the best outcome that would please everyone. After all, the death of the young master of the witch race was no small matter. If the young master of the dragon race were to die in the witch race, the dragon race would not let things go so easily. This time round, even Illumination Dragon Elder 4 said nothing. Chapter 1196, A Desperate Move. Chapter 1196, A Desperate Move. At this point, Illumination Dragon Elder 4 could no longer persist. Using an arm in exchange for the life of the young master of the witch race and avoiding a war, that was the best solution. Child, you'll have to suffer. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and sighed helplessly. The Blue Dragon Elder said, Long Zhu, sever your arm. Go back and recuperate well thereafter. If there's nothing else, don't come out for now. You want my arm? Su Zimo smiled and said slowly, no. The expressions of the Blue Dragon Elder and the others changed. The current situation was already the best they could do for Long Zhu. It would be ungrateful of him if he was still unsatisfied. Long Zhong sneered, this is not up to you. Don't forget who you are. The hornless dragon elder shook his head gently and said in a gentle voice, child, don't worry. Although losing an arm will affect your combat strength somewhat, you won't encounter any life and death dangers in the Dragon Bone Valley. As long as you continue cultivating and advance to the conjoint body realm, you will naturally be able to regrow your arm. I understand that. Su Zimo nodded and changed the topic. However, it's impossible if you want my arm. The divine phoenix bone was in his right arm. How could he sever it and give it to the witch race? Interesting. Elder Scorpion laughed. In my opinion, that lad's bloodline is impure and he can be considered as someone from a foreign race. He doesn't care about the safety of the dragon race at all. The reason why he did that was most likely because he wanted to sow grudges between our two races. Those words were meant to kill. Apart from Illumination Dragon Elder 4, the other elders of the dragon race had odd expressions. Everyone had to be wary of anyone that wasn't of the same race as them. Even if they did not believe it now, the seeds of doubt would be planted. Furthermore, Su Zimo's background was unknown and was suspicious to begin with. The methods of the witch race were not limited to fighting. Even through words, they carried killing potential. Long Zhong said coldly, I knew that something was off with you when you refused to hand over the secret skills previously. Now, you're even trying to go against the orders of us elders. If you won't sever your arm, I'll do it personally. Long Zhong strode forward and released the terrifying might of a conjoint body, grabbing towards Su Zimo's right arm. Bang! A figure darted in and punched Long Zhong's palm. Long Zhong took 2 steps back. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 was the one who interjected in time in front of Su Zimo. Illumination Elder 4, what are you doing? How dare you protect this lad still? Long Zhong glared and hollered. The Blue Dragon Elder frowned slightly as well. Illumination Elder 4, you're too protective of him. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 knew very well that he could no longer deal with the current situation. After a long silence, he said, I have to inform the Grand Elder of the Illumination Dragon lineage about this before I can make a decision. Is there a need to alarm the Grand Elder for such a small matter? The Winged Dragon Elder shook his head in disappointment as well. The Grand Elders of the 5 lineages were the most experienced existences of the dragon race and had noble statuses. They would not appear easily. Long Zhu, don't make things difficult for others. At that moment, Long Tsang stood out as well. Su Zimo smiled. The dragon race must not bow down. How can you forget what you just said in the blink of an eye? Long Tsang said in a deep voice, this is not bowing down. This is merely a step back. Oh? Su Zimo asked instead, if it was you, would you agree to having your arm severed? Fu. Long Tsang smiled. Long Zhu, you've disappointed me. You have decent talent and immense potential, but you're not qualified to compare to me. Pausing for a moment, he declared proudly, I can tell you that I won't sever my arm or even a single finger. Furthermore, there won't be any dragon that's qualified to have me sever my arm. That's because I'm the young master of the dragon race and will reign over the 5 lineages. I remember that you're not one yet. Su Zimo smiled gently. Is there a difference? Long Tsang said indifferently, I'm the only 5-clawed divine dragon of the dragon race, the number 1 of the heavenly dragon ranking. Once the ceremony of the race is held, I will be conferred the title of young master. The difference is merely ceremonial. That was the truth. Almost every dragon, including the elders, had already acknowledged Long Tsang as the young master of the dragon race. However, according to the rules, the conferment of the title would have to wait till the ceremony of the dragon race took place, where there would be a fight within the race to determine the young master. However, there was no one in this generation who could threaten Longzong's status. In fact, no dragon would even bother to fight him at the dragon race ceremony and cause trouble for themselves. Therefore, there was indeed merely a ceremonial difference before Longzong was conferred the title of the young master. Su Zimo said, in other words, if I'm the young master of the dragon race, you guys won't be qualified to have me sever my arm? Longzong roared in laughter. Good, you want to challenge me. I admire your courage, but unfortunately, you're not qualified. You can consider fighting for the position of the young master of the dragon race after you cultivate to the Dharma characteristic realm. You're still far from that. According to the rules of the dragon race, fights could only be fought within the same cultivation realm. Su Zimo was at the void reversion realm while Longzong was at the Dharma characteristic realm. Dharma characteristic realm. Su Zimo focused his gaze and said slowly, it's not completely impossible. He had already cultivated to the perfected void reversion realm, and it was unlikely for him to advance to the Dharma characteristic realm within a short period of time. However, there was a high chance of success in the Dragon Bone Valley with external help. A look of determination flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he said in a deep voice, Elder 4, please take me to the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. I want to be baptized by it. Ah! A series of cries sounded from the dragons. How is that possible? Illumination Dragon Elder 4 denied as well. The Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar was a mythical object that originated from the primordial era in the Dragon Bone Valley and contained a terrifyingly pure power. Every dragon had a chance to receive the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar, and their physical and bloodline powers would increase tremendously, awakening their innate divine powers. However, there was a prerequisite: the dragon race had to advance to the Dharma characteristic realm first. It did not mean that one could not accept it at the void reversion realm. It was because the body of a void reversion could not withstand the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. The baptism was extremely terrifying, even the physique of a dragon would explode instantly. Back then, Longzong only underwent the baptism after entering the Dharma characteristic realm as well. Most importantly, there was no need for the dragon race to take such a huge risk and undergo the Ancestral Dragon's baptism in advance. However, the situation that Su Zimo was in right now did not give him much time. If he wanted to advance to the Dharma characteristic realm as soon as possible, he would have to take the risk. Furthermore, Su Zimo believed that although the other dragons could not do it, his body and bloodline that cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness could withstand the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. He had that thought long ago. However, at this point of the situation, he was even more convinced of that thought. The reason why Su Zimo wanted to advance to the Dharma characteristic realm was not only to challenge Longzong and resolve the current crisis. More importantly, he had a feeling that the Yang Spirit section of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was not the final section. Daiyu might have left something else behind. The only way for him to find out was to advance to the Dharma characteristic realm. Chapter 1197, Baptism. Chapter 1197, Baptism. Longzhu, are you sure? Illumination Dragon Elder 4 had a grim expression as he whispered, the Ancestral Dragon's baptism is extraordinary and must not be joked about. If you can't withstand it. Although he did not continue, the meaning behind his words was clear. Longzong frowned slightly as well and said in a deep voice, Longzhu, you had better calm down. If you take a step back now, you'll only lose an arm. However, you will lose your life if you're unable to endure the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. Although Longzong's words were unpleasant, it was out of goodwill. However, Su Zimo had already made up his mind and shook his head. When he saw that, Illumination Dragon Elder 4 no longer tried to persuade him. Interesting. Elder Scorpion did not continue pushing and smiled faintly. That's perfect. I'll be a witness as well to see how strong this generation's young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage is. Everyone, let's go. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 looked at the Blue Dragon Elder and the others and said, "A single elder of the dragon race won't be enough to activate the baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar. There had to be at least 5. Everyone headed towards the center of the Dragon Bone Valley. Long Zhu, you were a little rash. Long Xie was worried. The baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar won't be so easy to endure. Some dragons fail even after entering the Dharma characteristic realm. Since things have come to this, I can only give it a shot." Su Zimo smiled calmly with a relaxed expression. Before long, the news that Long Zhu was about to receive the baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar spread through the entire Dragon Bone Valley. What? Long Zhu is going to receive the baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar? Isn't he at the void reversion realm? Could he have broken through? Impossible. Look, he's still the top of the hidden dragon ranking. Long Zhu has gone mad. He's going to receive the baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar at the void reversion realm. When the news spread, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples and caused an uproar. Almost all the dragons that were not in seclusion were alarmed and moved one after another, rushing towards the ancestral dragon divine pillar in the central region. Before long, more than 1,000 dragons were gathered around the ancestral dragon divine pillar and they were densely packed with voices. The ancestral dragon divine pillar stood upright in the skies. Grayish-white in color, it gave off an ancient aura and was located right in the middle of the Dragon Bone Valley. It could be said that the valley and the habitat of the dragon race was built around the ancestral dragon divine pillar. It was clear how much this pillar meant to the dragon race. Legend has it that the stone pillar came from the immortal world and had existed since the primordial era. There was even an ancestral dragon spirit within the stone pillar. It was the lifelike 5-clawed divine dragon etched on the stone pillar. Of course, there were many other legends about the ancestral dragon divine pillar. Around the ancestral dragon divine pillar was a spacious, 5-pointed stone platform. At that moment, Su Zimo stood on the stone platform beneath the ancestral dragon divine pillar with a calm expression and a resolute gaze. In the 5 corners of the stone platform, Illumination Dragon Elder 4 and the other 5 dragon elders stood still. Long Zhu, have you decided? It's not too late to regret now. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 said sternly, once the baptism begins, even we can't stop it. If you meet with danger, no one will be able to save you. Thank you for your concern, Elder. I've made up my mind. Su Zimo nodded. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 said in a deep voice, everyone, let's begin. The elders of the 5 lineages exchanged glances and conjured hand seals respectively, spitting out obscure words that possessed a strange power that shook the ancestral dragon divine pillar. That was a language unique to the dragon race. The 5 elders cut their fingertips at the same time and squeezed out a drop of blood. Fusing it into their hand seals, it formed a blood beam that entered the ancestral dragon divine pillar. The ancestral dragon divine pillar could only be activated with the bloodline of the dragon race as a medium and a secret skill. None of the dragons present were unfamiliar with it. They had been in the Dragon Bone Valley for countless years and had witnessed the ancestral dragon divine pillar opening countless times. However, this was extremely novel to the witches. A witch whispered, Elder Scorpion, do you think Long Zhu will be able to receive the baptism of the ancestral dragon pillar successfully? Fu. Elder Scorpion sneered, absolutely impossible. Haven't you heard? Even that 5-clawed divine dragon was only baptized after reaching the Dharma characteristic realm. This lad's bloodline is impure. Can he compare to a 5-clawed divine dragon? Another witch explained. What if? Long Zhu is the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage after all. The witch said. This time round, Elder Scorpion said nothing. However, he sent a voice transmission secretly with his spirit consciousness. Even if that lad manages to survive, I'll be able to cripple him without anyone knowing given my capabilities. With Elder Scorpion's words, the many witches no longer had any worries. Activate. Right then, the elders of the 5 lineages shouted at the same time. Boom! Suddenly, the ancestral dragon divine pillar vibrated with a loud bang. Right in front of everyone, one of the divine dragon's claws lit up beneath its abdomen, as though it was burning with flames. Immediately after, divine dragons blazing with flames burst forth from the stone pillars and filled the skies. At a glance, they were dense and emitted a terrifying might. That scene was extremely shocking. It was all right for the dragons present, most of them had seen this before. However, the witches looked somewhat pale. The divine dragons blazing with scarlet flames circled in midair for a moment before lowering their heads and charging towards Su Zimo, who was beneath the stone pillar. Those divine dragons were formed from the dragon chi in the ancestral dragon divine pillar. The so-called baptism was the infusion of dragon chi into one's body. The dragon chi would constantly refine and nourish the body and bloodline of the dragon race, causing their combat strength to increase exponentially. Under normal circumstances, if an illumination dragon were to undergo the baptism, he would awaken the dragon chi of the illumination dragon lineage. A winged dragon would awaken the dragon chi of the winged dragon lineage. Of course, that was not absolute. If there was a dragon with exceptional talent and a pure and powerful bloodline, the ancestral dragon divine pillar would naturally sense it and awaken even more dragon chi. For example, Longsang possessed the bloodline of a five-clawed divine dragon, and the ancestral dragon divine pillar released as much dragon chi as the 5 lineages. Although the scene before them was shocking, in reality, it was merely the awakening of a single lineage's dragon chi. That was because only a single claw of the 5-clawed divine dragon etched on the stone pillar lit up. Instantly, countless scarlet divine dragons swooped down and surged into Su Zimo's body from all directions. A massive scorching power exploded within his body. Su Zimo grunted and his body swayed. That power was way too domineering and pure, almost burning every single inch of his flesh. Bang! Boom! Boom! Su Zimo channeled his bloodline and a tsunami surged, attempting to contain that power. However, he turned into a gigantic flaming man before long, and scarlet flames burst forth from his body. Under the baptism of the dragon chi, cracks appeared on his skin in a shocking manner. Chapter 1198, 5 Lineage Dragon Chi. Chapter 1198, 5 Lineage Dragon Chi. 15 minutes passed. The divine dragons blazing with scarlet flames in the skies were still endless and swooped down continuously. Su Zimo stood on the stone platform and endured the baptism of the illumination dragon chi. His body and bloodline were transforming rapidly. The baptism of the dragon chi and the blazing flames, this is going to be an extremely terrifying torture. Some illumination dragons had undergone the baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar before. Therefore, they could empathize with that feeling and still had lingering fears. By the looks of it, Long Zhu won't be able to last long and will be burned to ashes. However, his body is truly strong as well. To think that he could last till now against the impact of the scarlet flame divine dragons. Just as some of the dragons were discussing, the ancestral dragon divine pillar vibrated once more. Roar! Immediately after, a dragon roar sounded. Another claw lit up on the 5-clawed divine dragon on the stone pillar. The dragons were shocked. This was a sign that a second dragon lineage's chi had been awakened. True enough. After the dragon claw lit up, streaks of green light burst forth from the stone pillar. The moment they left the stone pillar, green divine dragons were formed and coiled in midair, communicating with the scarlet flame divine dragons. The green and scarlet divine dragons swooped down at Su Zimo at the same time. Long Zhu's bloodline is so strong. Long Zhu might not be able to withstand the awakening of a single lineage's dragon chi. Now that there are dragon chi of 2 lineages descending, he's definitely dead. The dragons discussed. When he saw that, Illumination Dragon Elder 4 had mixed emotions. In the entire Dragon Bone Valley, there were less than 10 people who were qualified to awaken dragon chi of 2 lineages. Naturally, it was good that he was able to awaken the dragon chi of 2 lineages. However, that also meant that Su Zimo would have to endure twice the impact and baptism of the dragon chi. How could a void reversion's body endure the terrifying power? It wasn't easy for our Illumination Dragon lineage to produce a monster incarnate. Is he going to be destroyed just like that? Illumination Dragon Elder gripped his fists tightly and was extremely nervous. On the stone platform, Su Zimo was still holding on. The baptism of the dragon chi of 2 lineages was unable to cause devastating damage to his body and bloodline just yet. However, that pain was indeed arduous. His entire body hurt. The dragon chi had not only infiltrated his flesh and bloodline, but also his marrow and organs. Flesh and blood were incinerated, bones shattered and organs melted. Immediately after, life was restored to him under his powerful regeneration capabilities, and the process repeated itself. As time passed, the figure that was surrounded by dragons on the stone platform was still standing. Could Long Zhu have survived this calamity? That thought flashed through the minds of the cultivators. All of a sudden, with a boom, the ancestral dragon divine pillar shook once more. Roar! Immediately after, a third dragon roar echoed through the entire Dragon Bone Valley. The dragons were shocked. Under countless gazes, a third dragon claw lit up on the ancestral dragon divine pillar. Dragon chi of a third lineage had been awakened. This time round, it was not only the other dragons, even the elders of the 5 lineages present were shocked. There were less than 10 dragons in the entire Dragon Bone Valley who had awakened the dragon chi of 2 lineages. However, there was none who managed to awaken the dragon chi of 3 lineages. This meant that Long Zhu's bloodline talent was second only to the 5-clawed divine dragon who had awakened all 5 dragon lineages. Streaks of white light tore through the air and formed divine dragons that descended from the skies, entering Su Zimo's body. The dragon chi of 3 lineages descended at the same time. Su Zimo's body swayed unsteadily and his body trembled. However, he grit his teeth and endured it. Churning his blood chi, the sound of tsunami surged within his body as he absorbed the power of the dragon chi of 3 dragon lineages to strengthen himself. He cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness all year round and experienced the bone-piercing Yin wind and the pain of the karmic flames in the Tao inheritance ground. Later on, he received nourishment from the primordial divine spring. This body could be said to have been through countless hardships. How could it be defeated by the 3 dragon chi? In the depths of the Illumination Dragon lineage, in a cave deep in the mountains, a white-haired old man with a face full of wrinkles sat in a lotus position with a scarlet walking stick beside him, resting with his eyes closed. The old man was the Grand Elder of the Illumination Dragon lineage. Even when 2 dragon roars sounded from the ancestral dragon divine pillar, he was unmoved, as though he was petrified. However, he only opened his eyes when he heard the 3rd dragon roar. Nodding his head, he murmured, "Dragon chi of 3 lineages. Not bad." On the other side, in the depths of a cave in the blue dragon lineage, there were countless jewels and treasures. An old dragon with blue scales and beard was sprawled on it, snoring soundly. When he heard the 3rd dragon roar, the old dragon did not even open his eyes. He merely turned around and mumbled, "I wonder which cub is receiving the baptism." What a stir! Before long, a 4th dragon roar sounded from the direction of the ancestral dragon divine pillar. The old dragon was motionless. After a brief pause, the old dragon suddenly transformed into his human form and leaped up from his spot. There was disbelief in his eyes and there was no hint of drowsiness. He has actually awakened the dragon chi of 4 lineages. The old dragon looked in the direction of the ancestral dragon divine pillar and his gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the barrier and descend there. He's at the void reversion realm. The old dragon was even more shocked. At that moment, the vicinity of the ancestral dragon divine pillar was already silent. No one spoke. All the dragons were fixated on the figure on the stone platform with dumbfounded expressions. Dragon chi of 4 lineages. 4 of the 5 claws on the ancestral dragon divine pillar were lit up. The dragon chi of the 4 lineages descended and struck Su Zimo's body. The dragon Qi rampaged within his body and released a terrifying destructive power. Su Zimo could no longer stand as he knelt on the ground with his head lowered and a pale expression. His body was gradually expanding. It was as though there was a terrifying power within his body that was about to burst through his skin. At that time, he would definitely die, and even his essence spirit would not be able to avoid it. When he saw that, Illumination Dragon Elder 4 turned around suddenly and glared at Elder Scorpion with hatred in his heart. If Su Zimo were to die here, Elder Scorpion would be the culprit. If not for Elder Scorpion's pressure, Su Zimo would not have received the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar at the Void Reversion Realm. Elder Scorpion had a pleased expression and smiled, awaiting the final outcome quietly. On the stone platform, scarlet scales appeared one after another on Su Zimo's body. Under the impact of the dragon Qi from 4 lineages, he was forced to undergo dragonification to increase the strength of his flesh. Of course, this dragonification was far from its peak. He merely grew some dragon scales. It was far from his dragonification in battle. Slowly, right in front of everyone, Su Zimo stood up from his spot and his aura rose continuously. His gaze was burning and the scarlet scales on his body burned with flames that were almost transparent and shone with a crystalline luster. He made it. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 was delighted. Right then, a 5th dragon roar sounded. Pust! The dragons gasped. On the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar, the 5 claws beneath the Divine Dragon's abdomen shone completely. Dragon Qi of all 5 lineages descended. The smile on Elder Scorpion's face had vanished as well. What did the descent of Dragon Qi of 5 dragon lineages imply? Could another 5-clawed divine dragon be born from the dragon race? How is that possible? Long Zhong exclaimed. Long Tsang was initially sitting not far away with a calm expression. However, at that moment, he could not help but stand up. It was only at that moment that he realized he had a match. At the same time, the Dragon Bone Valley shook and the dragons were shocked. Many elders of the dragon race appeared in the firmaments to witness this scene. Chapter 1199, Innate Divine Powers. Chapter 1199, Innate Divine Powers. Good, good, good. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder stood up and looked in the direction of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar from the cave. His eyes shone brightly as he nodded repeatedly. Dragon Qi of 5 lineages, haha. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder could not help but laugh as the wrinkles on his face crumpled. Initially, he defended Su Zimo against everyone's objections, partly because of the red-headed ghost and partly because he valued Su Zimo's potential. What happened proved that his judgment and decision were not wrong. Swash! The space within the cave distorted. A green-haired old man appeared. He was burly, hale and hearty. Without any pleasantries, he said directly, "Congratulations, Boss Illumination." Well said, well said. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder replied with a smile. The person who arrived was the Blue Dragon Grand Elder. The Grand Elder of the 5 lineages was almost always the oldest and most noble existence among the dragon race. Given their status, although they were shocked, they could still calm down and not rush over to watch the show like the other dragon elders. Of course, the awakening of the Dragon Qi of 5 dragon lineages was an extremely rare event. Even they could not help but chat heartily. The Grand Elders of the Winged, Hornless and Horned Dragon lineages were in seclusion, and the Blue Dragon Grand Elder could only run to the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder. Even back in the primordial era, the birth of 2 5-clawed divine dragons was unprecedented. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder had lived for countless years. However, he was still excited at the mention of this matter. Every race had their own destiny and fortune. Typically speaking, for the dragon race, the fact that a 5-clawed divine dragon could be born was already a culmination of the fortune of the dragons. It was rare for a second 5-clawed divine dragon to be born. However, 2 of them were born in this generation. I wonder what would happen if the two five-clawed divine dragons were to clash and who would be stronger. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder grinned. Hee hee, even I'm looking forward to it now. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder waved his hand. Long Tsang has been in the Dharma characteristic realm for many years and has already cultivated to the perfected stage. Long Zhu is still too inexperienced. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder smiled without saying anything. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder frowned slightly and asked, why hasn't that lad transformed into his true form? Why is he still in his half-dragon form? Beneath the ancestral dragon divine pillar, the dragon chi of the 5 lineages formed into thousands of divine dragons that charged at a tall figure continuously. The figure was covered in scarlet scales that burned with scorching flames. However, the figure had not transformed into a complete dragon the entire time. Something's not right. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder frowned and shook his head. His bloodline aura is impure and he can't even conjure a complete dragon body. He's not a 5-clawed divine dragon. A 5-clawed divine dragon was a king of the dragon race and had the purest bloodline, even resulting in the birth of a terrifying 5th claw. How could it not even conjure a complete dragon body? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder gradually calmed down as well and realized that something was amiss. They seemed to be celebrating too early. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder looked at Su Zimo's right hand and said in a deep voice, his bloodline is impure and it's difficult for him to transform into a complete dragon. I do know the reason why. What is it? The Blue Dragon Grand Elder asked. That lad's right hand is the divine phoenix bone. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, with a divine phoenix bone in his body, it's only natural that his bloodline is impure. It's difficult for him to conjure a complete dragon body. When he heard that explanation, the Blue Dragon Grand Elder was even more puzzled. However, if his bloodline is impure, how did the ancestral dragon divine pillar awaken the dragon chi of 5 lineages? No matter how he looked at it, the situation was a paradox. Even with their experience, they could not figure out the logic behind it. Dragon blood, divine phoenix bone. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder murmured instinctively. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. At the same time, the Blue Dragon Grand Elder shuddered as though he recalled something. Could it be? The two old men turned around slowly and exchanged glances with widened eyes. Both could see the shock in the other's eyes. The moment that thought crossed their minds, their hairs stood on end. The thought was simply way too crazy. Impossible. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder gulped and shook his head. That's impossible. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder nodded as well. We should be imagining things. It's indeed impossible. At the same time, many dragons near the ancestral dragon divine pillar had already realized that Su Zimo did not possess the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon within his body. Of course, they could not understand why the ancestral dragon divine pillar would awaken the dragon chi of all 5 lineages. They could only assume that there was a problem with the ancestral dragon divine pillar that resulted in this situation. Long Tsang heaved a sigh of relief and sat back down. In his opinion, without the bloodline of the 5-clawed divine dragon, Su Zimo won't be his match even if the latter advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 was a little disappointed. However, on second thought, Su Zimo was only at the void reversion realm and had to endure the baptism of the 5 dragon chi. As long as he could tide through it safely, the benefits he would receive would be unimaginable. Some of the dragon elders in midair shook their heads as well. Elder Scorpion's initially tense heart gradually relaxed alongside his expression. If Su Zimo was truly a 5-clawed divine dragon, he would have to return fruitless. As time passed by, Su Zimo endured the baptism of the dragon chi of 5 lineages and the power within his body rose continuously. He had finally arrived at a critical point. There was a long silence. The world seemed to have frozen. An unknown period of time passed. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's body shuddered and there was a boom in his body. As though a barrier was smashed, his aura climbed rapidly and a powerful energy fluctuation burst forth from his surroundings. The void surged and even rippled. His dragon true body had entered the Dharma characteristic realm. At the same time, a strange feeling rose in Su Zimo's heart. A unique power began to emanate from his eyes. That was the power of divine powers. Innate divine powers, awakened. Innate divine powers were different from the divine powers comprehended in the cultivation world. Innate divine powers were powers that demons or dragons could automatically awaken after entering the Dharma characteristic realm. This was a talent that originated from the bloodline. Every race had different endowments and awakened different innate divine powers. For example, the armored mountain beast comprehended mountain-cleaving divine powers. Some of the rat demons comprehended burrowing divine powers. The innate divine powers awakened by the 5 lineages of the dragon race were different as well. The horned dragon lineage's innate divine power was the dragon tooth. Once awakened, the teeth in its mouth became even sharper and could even crush dermic weapons, dermic treasures and tear everything apart. The winged dragon lineage's innate divine power was the dragon scale. Once awakened, one's defense would increase tremendously. The blue dragon lineage's innate divine power was the dragon claw. Dragon claws were the most offensive and killing moves of the dragon race. Once awakened, they could penetrate everything. The hornless dragon lineage's innate divine power was the dragon horn. The illumination dragon lineage's innate divine power was the dragon eye. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm and awakening their innate divine powers, the power of the divine powers would first appear and it would cleanse their bodies and bloodlines, causing their bodies to become stronger and transform. The strength of a 5-clawed divine dragon was not merely in terms of bloodline. In the future cultivation path of the 5-clawed divine dragon, there was even a chance for it to awaken all the innate divine powers of the 5 dragon lineages and undergo 5 transformations. Chapter 1200, Ancestral Dragons Awakening. Chapter 1200, Ancestral Dragons Awakening. Ah! Roaring into the skies, Su Zimo's eyes shone with 2 terrifying scarlet flames that shot into the skies, disappearing into the clouds. Swoosh! The clouds in the firmament seemed to be burning. In the blink of an eye, they turned into fiery clouds that dyed the skies red. The dragons were moved. What a strong divine power aura. To think that he would cause such a huge commotion after awakening his innate divine powers. Even when Long Tsang awakened, he was only at this level. The illumination dragon lineage has been dormant for many years. How long has it been since someone has awakened their innate divine powers like this? The dragons discussed in shock. Long Tsang's expression was indifferent. In his opinion, Su Zimo was not worthy of being his opponent if the latter could not even reach that level. Raging flames burned in Su Zimo's eyes and a steady stream of energy surged out, covering his body like scorching lava. The power of divine powers tempered his body. His body and bloodline underwent a transformation. Every illumination dragon could awaken their innate divine powers. Although they had the same awakened dragon eyes, some of them were stronger and some were weaker. There was naturally a difference in their strength. That's right. In a cave far away, the blue dragon Grand Elder nodded slightly. Even if that lad isn't a 5-clawed divine dragon, his innate divine power has already been awakened to its limits. There was a illumination stone in Su Zimo's eyes. The innate divine powers that could awaken one's eyes could naturally reach their limits or even be stronger. However, the illumination dragon Grand Elder did not say anything. He merely frowned slightly and his gaze crossed the obstacles to land on the ancestral dragon divine pillar. Why? What's wrong? The blue dragon Grand Elder could not help but ask when he saw his unusual expression. The illumination dragon Grand Elder said in a deep voice, "The baptism under the ancestral dragon divine pillar is no small matter. Throughout history, every dragon has had to reveal their true dragon forms. This is a form of respect for the ancestral dragon. The ancestral dragon divine pillar was the utmost treasure of the dragon race and was left here to stabilize the fortune of the race. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder continued, if you receive the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar without even revealing your true form, something might happen that could incur the punishment of the Ancestral Dragon. Are you sure that's true? The Blue Dragon Grand Elder asked. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder pointed in the direction of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar and narrowed his eyes. Have you noticed any changes to the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar? The Blue Dragon Grand Elder's expression changed slightly and his gaze froze. Dragon Chi of the 5 lineages were awakened and the Ancestral Dragon on the stone pillar had 5 shimmering claws beneath its abdomen. At that moment, it was not just the 5 dragon claws. The body, tail and horns of the Ancestral Dragon shone with a mysterious aura from head to toe. That scene gave them a feeling. It was as though the Ancestral Dragon was about to come alive the next moment and soar through the air from the stone pillar. All of a sudden, the Ancestral Dragon's initially dark eyes lit up with 2 bedazzling glows. Bang! Boom! Boom! On the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar, a 5-clawed divine dragon with horns on its head circled around the stone pillar. Digging into the stone pillar with its 5 claws, it spiraled upwards and countless stone shards fell beneath it. The Ancestral Dragon had truly awakened. Pust! In the cave, the 2 elders gasped and their expressions changed. The Ancestral Dragon looked down from above with his bronze bell-sized dragon eyes that were filled with torrential flames. Looking down at Su Zimo beneath him, he exuded an extremely terrifying might and suddenly roared. Roar! A dragon roar sounded and the ground shook. If the 2 Grand Elders were already so shocked, it was easy to imagine what would happen around the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. That dragon roar nearly caused many Dragon Elders who were standing in midair to fall. A look of reverence flashed through the eyes of the dragons as they knelt and kowtowed in a spectacular manner. Even Illumination Dragon Elder 4, Long Zhong and the other 5 elders who were standing on the 5 corners of the stone platform knelt instinctively with horrified expressions. All the dragons present could sense the rage contained in the dragon roar. Even the witches half knelt on the ground at Elder Scorpion's signal. Elder Scorpion was smart and did not want to attract the Ancestral Dragon's attention by standing there like a crane in a flock of chicken. How could this be? The arm of the Blue Dragon Grand Elder trembled slightly. He had lived for countless years but he had never experienced such a situation. How did an Ancestral Dragon that was carved on a stone pillar awaken? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder was tense as well and glared fixedly at the Ancestral Dragon in the distance. Both of them were clear that Su Zimo's life was hanging by a thread. However, even if they wanted to save Su Zimo, they did not have the guts and courage. This was the Ancestral Dragon of the Primordial Era. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was their patriarch. But now, the patriarch was enraged and wanted to kill a dragon with an impure bloodline. Who would dare to stop him? It's over. It's over. I knew something big was about to happen. Long Zhu's bloodline is impure. By forcefully receiving the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar and not transforming into a complete dragon, he's challenging the Ancestral Dragon. In the eyes of the Ancestral Dragon, Long Zhu's actions are completely from an alien race that has come to steal his power. Some dragons trembled in fear. Even though they were watching from the sidelines, they could still feel their hearts trembling against the might of the Ancestral Dragon. It was a bloodline suppression. The dragons could not imagine how Su Zimo would feel being glared at by the Ancestral Dragon. At that moment, Su Zimo was still unconscious beneath the stone pillar. He had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and awakened his innate divine powers. The power of the divine power tempered his body and scorching lava flowed out from his eyes, washing through his body continuously. The pain was even more unbearable than the tempering of the dragon chi of 5 lineages. His consciousness was a little blurry and he could only grit his teeth and persevere through sheer willpower. He did not know about the Ancestral Dragon's awakening at all. However, in his daze, he felt a terrifying pressure that threatened to tear him apart. At that moment, he was already suffering to begin with. Coupled with the pressure he was experiencing, he felt frustrated and a surge of rage. Instinctively, Su Zimo reared his head in the direction of the ancestral dragon with a scarlet gaze. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar. Upon seeing that, the two elders in the cave shivered in fear. What was Long Zhu doing? He was actually shouting at the patriarch? He was truly tired of living. The two elders had ashen expressions. Initially, they were contemplating how they should plead for mercy to save Su Zimo from the ancestral dragon's wrath. But now, neither of them bore any hope. The two elders were waiting for the ancestral dragon to strike and kill Su Zimo. However, the strange thing was that the ancestral dragon hovered above the stone pillar motionlessly. Instead, the flames in his eyes showed signs of subsiding. The ancestral dragon's eyes were fixed on Su Zimo, as though he was contemplating and sensing something. What's going on? The two elders were puzzled. Beneath the stone pillar, Su Zimo panted slightly as veins popped up on his neck, seemingly still angry. Roar! He roared at the ancestral dragon once more. The next moment, the pupils of the two elders constricted and their hearts skipped a beat. They witnessed an incomparably shocking scene. Under Su Zimo's roar, the ancestral dragon seemed to have been shocked and actually shirked briefly. What did that action imply? Was the ancestral dragon feeling fear? Chapter 1201, Second Divine Power. Chapter 1201, Second Divine Power. The ancestral dragon's action was not obvious. The dragons near the stone pillars were already kneeling on the ground with lowered heads and did not notice this detail. If not for the fact that the two elders were fixated on the ancestral dragon, they would not have noticed it either. However, they still could not believe it. After all, they were thousands of kilometers away in the cave and could not see everything clearly. The moment the ancestral dragon shirked might have been their imagination. However, if the ancestral dragon was truly afraid, what was he afraid of? What was in Long Zhu's body that caused the ancestral dragon to feel fear and retreat? Under normal circumstances, the dragon race would not bow down to any race. As an ancestral dragon, he would not cower in the face of the other primordial 8 races or emperors, let alone avoid reversion with an impure bloodline of the dragon race. However, how else would they explain that scene? Unless... The two elders exchanged glances filled with shock and surprise. If the ancestral dragon was truly fearful, the guess that flashed through their minds earlier on was most likely true. That was the only guess that could explain the ancestral dragon's shirk of fear. That was the only guess that could explain why Long Zhu could awaken the dragon chi of the 5 lineages even though he was not a 5-clawed divine dragon. Of course, that was way too shocking. If it was confirmed, it would cause a massive change in the entire Tianhuang mainland. Even the 2 grand elders did not dare to make a conclusion with a single subtle action from the ancestral dragon. Both of them held their breaths and remained silent. Although they were in the cave, they were even more nervous than the other dragons as they glared at the ancestral dragon divine pillar without blinking. At that moment, the might of the ancestral dragon had dissipated entirely. His hostility and anger towards Su Zimo earlier on had vanished without a trace as well. There was no activity for a long time and some dragons looked up instinctively. All of a sudden, the ancestral dragon soared into the air and spiraled down, transforming into an ancient and pure dragon chi that burrowed into Su Zimo's head. This. The dragons were dumbfounded. Immediately after, a powerful aura burst forth from Su Zimo's body. The wounds on his body were healing at a visible speed. His skin that was burned by the lava flowing out of his eyes peeled off and new muscles grew. His scarlet hair grew once more and danced wildly like flames as his aura climbed rapidly. What's going on? The ancestral dragon disappeared? The ancestral dragon did not kill Long Zhu and instead gave him an opportunity? The scene before them was completely different from what everyone had imagined. In the cave, the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder's heart skipped a beat as realization flashed through his eyes. I got it. That ancestral dragon was merely condensed from a dragon chi in the stone pillar. That's right. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder nodded as well. The ancient books in the clan clearly recorded that apart from the 5 dragon lineages, there's another chi of the ancestral dragon in the stone pillar. However, it has never appeared throughout history. To think that it would be true. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder lamented. This meant that Su Zimo's bloodline had not only awakened the dragon chi of the 5 lineages, but also of the ancestral dragon. This ancestral dragon chi was even more precious than the 5 dragon chi combined. Su Zimo was already covered in injuries after the baptism of the 5 dragon chi. If not for the fact that he cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness regularly and possessed shocking regeneration capabilities, he would have been destroyed by the dragon chi of the 5 lineages. Thereafter, he entered the Dharma characteristic realm and awakened his innate divine powers. The scorching lava formed by his divine powers baptized his body and bloodline once again. Standing beneath the stone pillar, Su Zimo's half-dragon body looked battered and wretched. But now, with the augmentation of the chi of the ancestral dragon, his body shone with a powerful vitality once more. Every single dragon scale on his body shone with a scarlet crystalline glow, as though they had been refined countless times. The divine power in Su Zimo's eyes faded gradually. The awakening of his innate divine powers was coming to an end. His eyes shone with a scarlet red glow and his gaze was like a torch, even the dharmic powers in the void burned when he looked at it. That gaze was enough to kill. At that moment, Su Zimo was already awake. He surveyed his surroundings and froze instinctively. "Why, are you guys kneeling on the ground?" he asked with a frown. Earlier on, the ancestral dragon was clearly enraged and the dragons knelt down in fear. Even on the stone platform, Illumination Dragon Elder, Long Zhong and the others, including Elder Scorpion and the rest of the witch race, knelt down. But now, Su Zimo was the only one standing beneath the stone pillar. It was as though he was the ruler of the world, causing all the dragons to kneel and submit. Of course, among the dragons, a figure stood upright with a sharp aura. He glared at Su Zimo with a surging battle intent. Long Song. Even the elders of the dragon race knelt down. However, he did not bow down. He possessed the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon and would not bow down even against the ancestral dragon. Humph. Elder Scorpion looked terrible as he stood up hurriedly. It would be embarrassing if news of this were to spread. As a conjoint body expert, he knelt in front of a dragon that had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. The dragons rose one after another as well, still filled with questions. Right then, Su Zimo's body shuddered and he looked a little dazed. Once again, a terrifying aura spread from his body. This is divine powers. What's going on? Why is there divine power spilling out from Long Zhu's body? The dragons were shocked and exclaimed. Something's not right. This divine power seems to be even stronger than Long Zhu's newly awakened innate divine power. A dragon elder said sternly. Could it be? The dragons thought of a possibility. Long Zhu has awakened his second divine power. A dragon elder exclaimed. The dragons were in an uproar. Although there was a chance for a 5-clawed divine dragon to awaken the 5 innate divine powers, it was not something that one could comprehend fully upon entering the Dharma characteristic realm. It was a gradual comprehension as one's cultivation advanced. Even Long Tsang only awakened a single innate divine power when he entered the Dharma characteristic realm. But now, it was clear that Su Zimo had awakened a second one. How could this be? His bloodline is impure and he can't even conjure a complete dragon body. How can a second divine power be awakened? The dragons were puzzled and discussed. It's the chi of the ancestral dragon. A dragon elder said in a deep voice. The chi of the ancestral dragon not only changed Long Zhu's bloodline and body, it also granted him a second divine power. There's such a good thing. I've got it. Long Zhu must have received a baptism as a half-dragon and by some freak coincidence, obtained the acknowledgement of the chi of the ancestral dragon. The dragons did not know the reason at all, nor did they notice the ancestral dragon's fearful shirk as they made wild guesses. All of a sudden, the power of divine powers burst forth from Su Zimo's body. Instantly, the world shook and a phenomenon descended. The dragons were shocked. A terrifying pressure descended from the skies, and many dragons could not withstand it. They cried out tragically and had just stood up when they knelt down once more with a thud. Chapter 1202, For Divine Powers. Chapter 1202, For Divine Powers. It was said that in the primordial era, some dragons with heavenly-defying bloodlines and shocking talent would trigger universal phenomenons when they awakened their innate divine powers. Initially, in the eyes of the dragons, this was only a legend. After all, even Longsang, who possessed the bloodline of a five-clawed divine dragon, did not cause such a stir when he awakened his innate divine powers. But now, the dragons witnessed this legend personally. Above the firmaments, the clouds split apart and a gigantic, menacing dragon head appeared slowly, looking down at the Dragon Bone Valley with a rampant might. Although the dragon head was not corporeal and was merely a phantom, every dragon could feel a tremendous pressure. Some dragons could not withstand it and knelt down. Only some of the dragon elders present could remain standing. How strong was the divine power to be able to cause the world to tremble and send down phenomenons after its awakening? More importantly, the awakening of the second divine power also meant that Su Zimo's body and bloodline would undergo another transformation. True enough. The power of divine power spread and Su Zimo's bloodline rumbled, as though raging tides were surging through his body. Coupled with the awakening of his innate divine powers and the infusion of the ancestral dragon chi, Su Zimo's body and bloodline had evolved 3 times after he entered the Dharma characteristic realm. This change could be considered as a complete transformation of his body. Many dragons were envious of such an opportunity. Good, good, good. Longsang nodded repeatedly. There was no hint of jealousy or fear in his eyes. Instead, his fighting spirit intensified. It was only now that he truly stopped underestimating Su Zimo and regarded the latter as a supreme opponent that could match him. Elder Scorpion remained silent with a dark expression. The more outstanding Su Zimo's performance was, the higher his status in the dragon race and the harder it would be for him to attack this lad. Initially, he merely wanted to watch the hype. The best scenario would be if Su Zimo failed the baptism and he would be able to relax. To think that the situation would develop beyond his expectations. Or rather, nobody expected this. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, 2 divine powers were awakened consecutively. This was rare even in the primordial era when the primordial 9 races ruled over Tianhuang mainland. The fortune of this generation's dragon race is way too strong. Elder Scorpion narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, apart from the birth of a 5-clawed divine dragon, there's now another monster incarnate. Should I step in to kill him? A cold glint flashed through Elder Scorpion's eyes and he wanted to kill. However, he knew in his heart that with so many dragon elders present, it was impossible for him to kill Su Zimo silently. Once he attacked, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed as well. To pay with my life for the sake of a Dharma characteristic dragon. Elder Scorpion's expression was dark as he contemplated countermeasures while weighing the pros and cons. In a cave far away, the 2 Grand Elders looked pleased. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder lamented, the awakening of a divine power caused the world to tremble and a phenomenon to descend. It's been many years since something like that has happened. Now that this lad has obtained the recognition of the ancestral dragon chi, our guess should be rather close. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said excitedly, the dragon race is flourishing in this generation. What lad? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder glared at the Blue Dragon Grand Elder and corrected him with a stern expression, we have to address him as young master from now on as well. Why yes. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder did not resist or refute. Instead, he agreed with a smile. Although Su Zimo had yet to fight against Longsang, the 2 elders knew that there was no doubt about who the young master of the dragon race would be. Furthermore, the status of this young master of the dragon race was above them. Or rather, it was above the entire dragon race. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder was older and pondered for a moment before reminding, "This is a serious matter. It's enough that you and I know about it. We must not spread it. The young master has yet to grow to his peak. If his identity is exposed, it might cause panic among the other races and he might get killed." "Humph," the Blue Dragon Grand Elder said coldly. "Who would dare to touch our young master in the Dragon Bone Valley? No matter what, it's never wrong to be careful." The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder sighed gently. "Don't forget the battle of the Primordial Era." The Blue Dragon Grand Elder fell silent at the mention of that battle. A moment later, their gazes returned to the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. At that moment, Su Zimo was almost done with the baptism of the second divine power. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder frowned slightly and pointed into the distance. "What's up with those witches? Why are they in our Dragon Bone Valley?" "Wu Xie," the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder murmured softly, "what is he doing here?" The Grand Elders of the 5 lineages were almost always in seclusion all the time to recuperate. Unless something major happened, they would not be disturbed. The death of the young master of the witch race in Su Zimo's hands was not made known to the 2 Grand Elders yet. Beneath the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief and was delighted. Some of the Dragon Elders guessed correctly, the second divine power he awakened came from the Ancestral Dragon Chi. To think that there would be such a benefit to receiving the baptism of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. Su Zimo muttered to himself. If any other dragon heard that, they would probably vomit blood from anger. The power of divine powers tempered his body once more, and his body and bloodline had already transformed to a brand new realm. Every single move he made was filled with immense strength. Su Zimo nodded to himself as he contemplated the obscurity of the second divine power. The divine power was known as the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. Using the bloodline of an ancestral dragon as a medium, it gathered the chi of the dragon race and summoned a divine pillar. It could suppress fortune and the 10,000 races. It was extremely powerful. Right then, Su Zimo's heart stirred. He remembered something. Now that he was at the Dharma characteristic realm, what else was there to the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness? Instinctively, he looked within his consciousness. True enough. Something had already happened within his consciousness. 4 fist-sized balls of light surrounded his essence spirit. It was impossible to tell what was within each ball of light. However, every single ball of light emitted an extremely terrifying aura that caused even Su Zimo's heart to skip a beat. At the same time, a familiar voice sounded in Su Zimo's consciousness. Su Zimo was stunned when he heard that voice. A strong sense of longing surged in his heart and his expression turned gentle. That was Dai Yu's voice. Su Zimo would never be able to forget it. After the Yang Spirit section, there's a 10th section of the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness, and that's the Divine Power section. It's difficult to record divine powers in words, and there are no cultivation techniques. They can only be passed down through memories. Dai Yu's voice was still indifferent and calm as water. If you can reach this point, you will naturally be able to hear those words. If you can't, it's useless even if I tell you beforehand. It will only add to your troubles and obsession. There are 4 divine powers in the divine power section that correspond to the Dharma characteristic, conjoint body, Mahayana and tribulation transcendence realms. You can only comprehend a divine power when your cultivation realm is high enough. The statement came to an end at that point. It was left behind by Dai Yu beforehand. In fact, if Su Zimo had not cultivated to the Dharma characteristic realm, he would not have even heard those words. Chapter 1203, Attack of Wu Xie. Chapter 1203, Attack of Wu Xie. If I'm not wrong, these should be the 4 divine powers recorded in the divine power section. Su Zimo looked at the 4 mysterious balls of light that revolved around his essence spirit in his consciousness. It was only now that the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was truly revealed. Initially, only 8 demon kings were formed after he cultivated to the Yang spirit section. If the 4 mysterious balls of light meant that there were 4 demon kings, there would be a total of 12 including the previous 8. Just as he was pondering, one of the balls of light in his consciousness shattered. Within, a palm-sized divine turtle appeared. It was extremely sentient and floated in an ocean, looking at Su Zimo motionlessly. The moment Su Zimo met with the divine turtle's gaze, his mind buzzed. A mysterious realization gradually flowed through his heart. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, the first divine power of the divine power section was dispelled. The divine power came from one of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the sea-calming turtle. In the vast wilderness, there was a desolate ocean. Among them, a true dragon reigned supreme and was invincible, known as the Desolate Ocean Dragon King. In the depths of the endless desolate ocean, there was a spirit turtle that was much older than the Desolate Ocean Dragon King. Normally, the spirit turtle hid in the depths of the desolate ocean in silence. However, once it appeared, even the Desolate Ocean Dragon King would not be able to cause much of a stir. Through the gaze of the sea-calming turtle, Su Zimo gradually recalled some of the legends about the vast wilderness. It was like a memory inheritance. Through the gaze of the spirit turtle, there was not only the legacy of those legends, but also a divine power. Su Zimo stood motionlessly beneath the stone pillar with his eyes closed. All of a sudden, an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation burst forth from his body and was released. The dragons widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. That was the power of divine powers. Su Zimo, who had just awakened 2 divine powers, had a 3rd divine power burst forth from his body. Furthermore, the aura of that divine power seemed to be even more terrifying than the first 2. If the dragons were shocked when Su Zimo awakened his 2nd divine power, by the time the 3rd divine power descended, the world was silent. The scene before them had completely exceeded their understanding. The dragons held their breaths and focused, merely looking at the figure beneath the stone pillar with widened mouths. Their expressions were filled with extreme shock and their eyes could not help but reveal a hint of reverence. A 3rd divine power has awakened? In the cave, the 2 grand elders shuddered and were dumbfounded. Even with their experience, they could not understand such a situation, let alone the other dragons. A large shadow shrouded the top of the Dragon Bone Valley. Boom! 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 Stomping on the Dragon Bone Valley like 4 heavenly piercing pillars, every single step caused the ground to quake and the weather to change. The dragons looked up instinctively. A spirit turtle with an ancient aura was carrying a gigantic and heavy turtle shell on its back. Walking over slowly, it looked like a god. The gigantic, malevolent phantom of the ancestral dragon that appeared when Su Zimo awakened his 2nd divine power had yet to dissipate completely from within the clouds above the firmaments. After the spirit turtle descended, the phantom of the ancestral dragon cried tragically and dissipated instantly. It could not defend against it at all. This. Some of the dragons were so shocked that they could no longer speak. Look! A dragon pointed to the foot of a spirit turtle not far away. There was a gigantic pit. This was an actual pit created by the phenomenon of the spirit turtle after Su Zimo awakened his divine powers. The ancestral dragon phenomenon that descended when his 2nd divine power was awakened was merely a phantom. However, that spirit turtle was completely corporeal. This meant that the 3rd divine power that was awakened might be even more terrifying than the 2nd divine power of the ancestral dragon's inheritance. At that moment, a pair of sinister eyes were hidden among the dragons. Initially, Elder Scorpion was still hesitant. However, when he saw Su Zimo awaken his 3rd divine power, he made up his mind to attack. He had to kill Long Zhu. This lad was way too terrifying. Of course, Elder Scorpion did not dare to attack brazenly either. He merely activated the secret skill of the witch race in secret and released a wisp of imperceptible spirit consciousness that silently pierced into Su Zimo's consciousness. At that moment, there were many dragon elders present. However, the attention of those dragons were drawn in by the terrifying gigantic spirit turtle in the firmaments and did not notice Elder Scorpion's actions at all. At the same time, in a cave far away, the blue dragon Grand Elder felt emotional and lamented, "Young Master's potential is way too terrifying." The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder nodded as well. "That's right. Furthermore, the young master has many secrets on him. There might be even more than we imagined." All of a sudden, the two Grand Elders seemed to have sensed something and their expressions changed. "Wu Xie, how dare you!" Without hesitation, the two Grand Elders roared and vanished from the spot, descending above the ancestral dragon divine pillar. Although Wu Xie's actions were obscure and could deceive the other dragon elders, it could not deceive the two Grand Elders. However, even if the two Grand Elders sensed it and wanted to stop it, it was already too late. They truly had not expected Wu Xie to be so audacious as to attack a dragon in the Dragon Bone Valley. When he heard the roars of the two Grand Elders of the dragon race, Elder Scorpion sneered internally. The moment he attacked Su Zimo, he had already torn a major transference talisman in his palm. If Su Zimo were to die and he used the major transference talisman to escape, even the two Grand Elders of the dragon race would not be able to capture him. As for the other witches that followed him, it did not matter even if they died in the Dragon Bone Valley. It did not matter if some people from the witch race were compensated to be able to kill such a monster incarnate of the dragon race. His wisp of spirit consciousness had already entered Su Zimo's consciousness and transformed into a figure that was identical to him. Elder Scorpion was shocked when he saw the phenomenon in Su Zimo's consciousness. Even with his cultivation, he felt shudders in the consciousness against the three balls of light. At that moment, Su Zimo's essence spirit was meeting the spirit turtle's gaze. It was receiving its inheritance and did not notice the danger at all. "Fufu, so what if you're a monster incarnate? Pay with your life." The spirit consciousness sneered and was about to attack. All of a sudden, in the consciousness, the spirit turtle that was floating silently at the side turned around and looked at Elder Scorpion's spirit consciousness with a cold gaze. Roar! Opening its mouth, the spirit turtle let out a deafening roar at Elder Scorpion's spirit consciousness. Boom! The spirit consciousness conjured by Elder Scorpion dissipated instantly. Not only that, even Elder Scorpion in the crowd was shocked and grunted. He felt a sharp pain in his essence spirit and almost fainted. Elder Scorpion realized that his essence spirit was already injured. What was that? He cursed internally. How could there be such a terrifying spirit being in Long Zhu's consciousness that could sense killing intent and attack him? At that moment, the two Grand Elders of the Illumination Dragon and Blue Dragon lineages arrived. Elder Scorpion had already torn the major transference talisman preemptively and a gigantic pitch-black dimensional tear appeared behind him. Chapter 1204, How Dare You? Chapter 1204, How Dare You? Actually, when the two Grand Elders descended above the ancestral dragon divine pillar, they realized that they were a step too late and could not save Su Zimo in time. Both of them were shocked and furious. After clarifying their guesses, Su Zimo's life was even more important than theirs. But now, an outsider had attempted to kill their young master right under their noses in the Dragon Bone Valley, that was akin to touching their reverse scale. However, a strange scene happened the moment the two Grand Elders appeared. Beneath the stone pillar, Su Zimo was still motionless. His eyes were closed as he continued to comprehend his divine powers, seemingly unaffected. On the contrary, Wu Xie who attacked Su Zimo grunted dully with a change in expression, as though he was severely injured. Initially, Wu Xie wanted to tear the major transference talisman and was about to be teleported away. However, he was delayed for a moment due to the stagger of his body. The entire process happened in a flash. The two Grand Elders did not have time to think about the reason behind this and made a prompt decision to attack right away. Where can you run to? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder harumphed coldly and two scorching beams of light shot out from his eyes. They were extremely fast and shot towards Elder Scorpion instantly. However, the major transference talisman was already shattered. A gigantic pitch-black crack appeared behind Elder Scorpion and he leaped into it, disappearing. The two blazing beams of light shot into the dark and cold crack without causing any ripples. The gigantic crack closed rapidly. Once the crack closed and space was restored, the two Grand Elders would not be able to capture Elder Scorpion even if they had divine powers. Unless they killed their way into the ghost-cursed tomb. You want to escape after coming to my Dragon Bone Valley to kill? The blue dragon Grand Elder was enraged and extended his arm from dozens of feet away. A menacing gigantic dragon claw appeared and reached into the crack. Elder Scorpion made use of the dimensional tear to avoid the fatal attack of the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder and thought to himself that he was lucky. Before he could catch his breath, he felt a strong sense of danger. Immediately after, a menacing claw descended from the darkness and grabbed him. Against that claw, his body was like paper and was penetrated instantly, causing blood to flow. There was no race that could defend against the sharpest claws of the dragon race with their bodies. Furthermore, among the primordial 9 races, the witch race had the weakest physique. Ah! Elder Scorpion let out a tragic cry. In the void, just as the gigantic pitch-black crack was about to close, the blue dragon Grand Elder yanked Elder Scorpion out. A few bloodied holes appeared on Elder Scorpion's body. Dark green blood flowed out slowly with a nauseating stench. The dragon claw of the blue dragon Grand Elder had already pierced through Elder Scorpion's body. His tendons and bones were broken and his organs were completely destroyed. Conjoint body mighty figures had boundless dermic powers and could regrow severed limbs. An injury as such was not fatal for Elder Scorpion. However, he had fallen completely into the hands of the blue dragon Grand Elder and his vitals were pierced. His blood chi was deteriorating and it was impossible for him to break free. The blue dragon Grand Elder pinched this conjoint body realm expert of the witch race as though he was carrying a weak chick. Cough. Elder Scorpion's face was frightfully pale as he spat out mouthfuls of blood. He cursed internally. If the mysterious spirit turtle in Su Zimo's consciousness had not roared and caused a backlash to his essence spirit, causing it to pause for a moment, even the blue dragon Grand Elder would not have been able to capture him. He would have most likely returned to the ghost-cursed tomb by now. Many dragons were stunned and did not know what happened. A Grand Elder of the dragon race would not appear so easily. But now, 2 of them had appeared at the same time with a murderous intent. Furthermore, Elder Scorpion caused the 2 Grand Elders to attack at the same time. It was clear how furious they were. The witches were even trembling in fear. None of them were fools. They had witnessed the scene of Elder Scorpion tearing the major transference talisman. It was clear that Elder Scorpion wanted to abandon them and escape alone. If Elder Scorpion were to escape, their fates would be imaginable against the wrath of the dragon race experts. How dare you! The blue dragon Grand Elder hollered. That single casual statement from him contained the shock of a dragon roar. Although Wu Xie was a conjoint body expert, he was severely injured and his blood chi was weak. He still felt a sharp pain in his ears and his features were contorted. If that was the case for Wu Xie, it was even worse for the other witches. Ah! 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 The remaining 10-odd witches cried tragically and their eardrums were pierced. All of them fell to the ground with pained expressions, curled up as green blood oozed from their ears. The 2 Grand Elders were truly enraged. I wonder what I did to provoke the killing intent of the Grand Elders of the dragon race. Elder Scorpion grit his teeth and asked slowly. You're asking the obvious. The blue dragon Grand Elder sneered, how dare you attack the young master of the dragon race in the Dragon Bone Valley? You truly don't know what's good for you. The young master of the dragon race? The dragons were slightly stunned when they heard that. However, the dragons did not think too much about it and merely thought that it was a slip of the tongue from the enraged blue dragon Grand Elder. He should be referring to the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage. Foo-foo. Elder Scorpion chuckled and quibbled, what a joke. Look at Long Zhu. Is he injured at all? Can he still be alive if I had attacked him? It was extremely easy for a conjoint body expert to attack an unguarded dragon who had just advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm. However, at that moment, Su Zimo was still standing beneath the ancestral dragon divine pillar and comprehending his divine powers without being affected. This was truly strange. The two Grand Elders were puzzled as well. The strangest thing was that after Elder Scorpion attacked, he seemed to have received an impact and was injured instead. Although they were puzzled, what sort of characters were the two Grand Elders? They were all decisive to kill and were completely unmoved. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder had white hair. However, his eyes were burning with rage as he said coldly, "Do you think that such words can protect your life? Let me tell you clearly that it's lucky that Long Zhu is fine today. If anything happens to him, the dragon race will definitely wage war against the witch race at all costs." Everyone could hear the killing intent in the tone of the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder. A thought flashed through the minds of the dragons. If anything happened to Long Zhu, the dragon race would truly wage war at all costs. However, what the dragons did not understand was that even though Long Zhu was the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage, the two Grand Elders seemed to be way too emotional. "Don't kill me." Elder Scorpion was truly flustered. He could clearly sense that the two Grand Elders of the dragon race were truly bent on killing him. In that life and death moment, his mind raced and a thought flashed through his mind as he said hurriedly, "I can trade a secret for my life." "What secret?" "I don't want to know at all." The Blue Dragon Grand Elder sneered with a disdainful expression. In his opinion, this was merely Elder Scorpion's final struggle. Elder Scorpion said word by word, "You must want to know. Furthermore, this secret concerns the safety of the primordial 9 races. If you kill me, you dragons will definitely regret it." Chapter 1205, Not Even a Single Hair. Chapter 1205, Not Even a Single Hair. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder frowned slightly and hesitated. He could tell that Elder Scorpion did not sound like he was lying. What could have happened that would affect the safety of the primordial 9 races? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said indifferently, "Why not listen to him? I want to see what secrets he can reveal. Elders, you have to give me a promise to spare my life." Elder Scorpion's gaze was dark as he grit his teeth. "Otherwise, I won't tell you even if I die." "We'll have to see what you can say if you want to live," the Blue Dragon Grand Elder sneered. Elder Scorpion said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, this secret is enough to trade my life." "All right." The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder nodded. "Don't worry, as long as the secret you reveal can move us, we'll let you live." When he heard that, Elder Scorpion's spirit consciousness moved. Suddenly, a black scale flew out from his storage bag. When they saw the scale, the two Grand Elders of the dragon race were slightly stunned and looked confused. But soon, the two of them seemed to have thought of something and their hearts skipped a beat. Their expressions changed and their eyes were filled with disbelief. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder released his grip and without even looking at Elder Scorpion who was on the ground, he held the black scale at his fingertip and focused. "Pust!" he gasped. There was no mistake about the scale's appearance and the aura it emanated. The pupils of the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder constricted slightly with a bewildered expression. The two Grand Elders could tell that the scale could not be from the primordial era. Otherwise, the aura on it would have dissipated long ago. The scale looked like it had just fallen off and was relatively tender. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder flipped his palm. Apart from the two Grand Elders, the other dragons did not manage to make out what it was. This was no small matter and it was inconvenient for outsiders to know about it unless they knew the exact situation. "What's going on?" The Blue Dragon Grand Elder glared at Elder Scorpion on the ground and asked sternly. "The two of you can't recognize it?" Elder Scorpion asked instead with a mocking expression. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder took a deep breath. "A bloodline of it is still alive?" Elder Scorpion said slowly, that's right. As you can see, it has already returned in this generation. The other dragons were confused, but the two Grand Elders knew the seriousness of the matter. Elder Scorpion continued, don't blame me for not reminding you guys, but it's growing. Right now, it should be at the Void Reversion or Dharma characteristic realm. Once it grows up, hee. He gave a strange laugh and did not continue. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder pondered for a moment before asking again, how can I be certain that this is true? Isn't it too hasty to judge based on a single scale? If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do either. Elder Scorpion said, this time round, if it wasn't by chance, I wouldn't have been able to discover its tracks. If I'm not wrong, Goose Sect was destroyed by it. It was easy to verify the matter. As long as one were to take a look at Goose Sect's mountain gate, they would know if it was true. How? Elder Scorpion asked, it's enough to trade my life for this secret, right? This time round, the two Grand Elders remained silent. That secret was way too shocking. It would be worth it even if Elder Scorpion was spared 100 or even 1,000 times for it. Leave. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder waved his hand and threw the scale to Wu Xie. Elder Scorpion was delighted, but he maintained his composure and grinned. Thank you for your kindness, Grand Elder. Immediately, Elder Scorpion turned slightly and growled, help me, let's go. It was only then that the remaining witches reacted and advanced one after another, helping the severely injured Scorpion Elder up. They summoned their spirit vessels and sped out of the Dragon Bone Valley, not daring to linger for a moment. That was not the only reason why the two Grand Elders chose to release Elder Scorpion. It was also because Su Zimo was safe and sound. If Su Zimo were to die, the two Grand Elders would not give Elder Scorpion the chance to reveal the secret in their wrath. What Elder Scorpion said was way too terrifying. Even after Elder Scorpion left, the two Grand Elders remained silent with grim expressions. In that short period of time, Su Zimo had already finished comprehending his divine powers. As the inheritance divine power ended, the spirit turtle that he was looking at in his consciousness vanished as well. There were only 3 balls of light left in his consciousness. Su Zimo could not see what was within, and neither did he know which demon king the 3 balls of light corresponded to. He opened his eyes and snapped out of his stupor only to discover 2 old men with long beards standing in the air, frowning in deep thoughts with grim expressions. The other dragons were mostly confused. As for Elder Scorpion and the others of the witch race, they had already vanished. Earlier on, he was comprehending his divine powers and was unaware of everything that happened. Although he was done comprehending the divine powers, the body tempering process was not over yet. Su Zimo awakened his 3rd divine power. Now, his body and bloodline underwent another transformation. This meant that he endured 4 transformation processes after he advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm. This was a true complete transformation. At that moment, even Longsang felt waves of pressure. Even when Su Zimo awakened his 2nd divine power, Longsang was 70% confident that he could suppress Su Zimo. At that moment, he was not even confident of success. Of course, the more that was the case, the more excited he was. He was not afraid of failure, he was afraid that no one would be able to defeat him. We've got to think about this matter at length. Let's take a mental note of it first. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder sent a voice transmission to the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder. Yes. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder nodded and looked at Su Zimo beneath the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. If Long Zhu can awaken his true bloodline and revert to his true form, he might be able to fight it. That's right. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said, however, we don't know where the opportunity for Long Zhu to awaken his bloodline will be. Pausing for a moment, the Blue Dragon Grand Elder suddenly frowned. Surveying his surroundings, he asked loudly, what was the witch race doing here? Neither of them knew why Wu Xie was in the Dragon Bone Valley yet. The Horned Dragon Elder, Long Zhong, recounted how Su Zimo killed the young master of the witch race and another witch thereafter. Finally, he said, this matter started because of Long Zhu. Wu Xie wanted an explanation. Later on, under our persistence, he asked Long Zhu to sever his arm to resolve the matter. Long Zhong's statement was somewhat exaggerated and was even veering towards tattling. Illumination Dragon Elder frowned when he heard that, but he did not know how to refute. After all, what Long Zhong said was the truth. Sever his own arm, sever his own arm. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder had a dark expression and grit his teeth. Long Zhong could not guess the thoughts of the Blue Dragon Grand Elder and continued to think that this lad would ignore the big picture completely and was not willing to sever his arm. Sever your head. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder could no longer hold it in and cursed. He charged in front of Long Zhong and smacked his head with a huge slap. Who gave you permission to sever his arm? Who gave you permission to sever his arm? Each time he said that, the Blue Dragon Grand Elder would give Long Zhong a tight slap. Right in front of everyone, Long Zhong was beaten silly with a helpless expression. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said angrily, he cannot lose even a single hair, let alone an arm. Chapter 1206, Peak Battle. Chapter 1206, Peak Battle. Long Zhong was not the only one stunned by the few slaps, even the dragons were dumbfounded and there was an uproar. No matter what, Long Zhong was one of the elders of the Horned Dragon lineage and had a noble status. The Grand Elder of the 5 lineages had an extraordinary status in the clan and ignored worldly affairs. There had never been a time when they were furious enough to punish an elder for the sake of a junior. They left zero dignity for Long Zhong. As the young master of the Blue Dragon lineage, Long Tsang had not seen the Blue Dragon Grand Elder stand up for him. What puzzled the dragons the most was that this was not a big deal to begin with. Even if Long Zhu had lost an arm, there was no need for an elder to be beaten this badly, right? What did the Grand Elder mean by that? Can't lose even a single strand of hair. Isn't that way too protective of Long Zhu? I think so too. The 2 Grand Elders are acting a little overly extreme. The dragons discussed softly. Long Zhong's face was flushed red. It was unknown whether it was due to the slaps or embarrassment, but his blood surged as he straightened his neck and shouted, I respect you as the Blue Dragon Grand Elder, but I want to know what rights you have to slap me. Even Su Zimo was shocked, let alone Long Zhong who was beaten up. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said coldly, you wanted the young master of our race to sever his arm to resolve this matter. Do you think you deserve a beating? Ha! Long Zhong laughed in anger instead. Grand Elder, you must be joking. The dragon race's grand ceremony has yet to be held and Long Zhu is only the young master of the Illumination Dragon lineage. He's not the young master of our 5 lineages. His body isn't so precious that we can't even touch him. If I say that he's the young master of the dragon race, he is. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder asked expressionlessly, are you unconvinced? I'm not the only one. Our clansmen have witnessed everything. Who among them is convinced? The young master of the dragon race is no small matter. How can we be so casual about it? Long Zhong was fearless as well and said in a deep voice, Long Tsang possesses the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon and yet he has to wait till the dragon race's grand ceremony to be conferred the title of young master. What rights does Long Zhu have? Indeed, as Long Zhong had said, most of the dragons were indignant. How long had Su Zimo been in the dragon race for? At most, it was less than 10 years. In terms of emotions, most of the dragons leaned towards Long Tsang. Although Su Zimo had also awakened the dragon chi of 5 lineages and 3 divine powers when he entered the Dharma characteristic realm, his bloodline was impure after all. He could not even conjure his true form as a dragon. Strictly speaking, he was not even a true dragon. How could someone like that become the young master of the dragon race? As for Long Tsang, he possessed the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon and was a king among the dragon race. It was clear who was qualified. Right then, Long Tsang stood up slowly and glared at Su Zimo with a sharp gaze with a raring battle intent. If you want to become the young master of our race, you've got to defeat me first. At that moment, the tempering of Su Zimo's body by his third divine power had already ended. He awakened 3 divine powers and underwent 4 transformations. At that moment, Su Zimo felt that every single inch of his flesh was filled with a terrifying power that was about to spew out, seeking an outlet. He no longer had the danger of losing his arm and was in no hurry to fight Long Tsang. However, he had just broken through and wanted to find a true opponent to fight to his heart's content. Among his peers, the only one who could fight him was Long Tsang. As you wish. Su Zimo was fearless as well. Let's head to the Dragon Blood battlefield. All right. Long Tsang's gaze shone brightly as he agreed without hesitation. Long Zhu, you've just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and are unfamiliar with the power of the Dharma characteristic realm. As such, you might not be familiar with the use of divine powers. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, why don't the 2 of you fight to your heart's content during the ceremony? That's right. Before Su Zimo could reply, Long Tsang nodded. You're right, Grand Elder. I was a little anxious. Long Tsang's honesty left a good impression on Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled gently and waved his hand. There's no need. I'll use our fight to familiarize myself with the powers of the Dharma characteristic realm and comprehend the divine powers. Confidence, pride and arrogance. This was equivalent to using a 5-clawed divine dragon as a whetstone. All right. Long Tsang no longer pushed back and leaped onto the Dragon Blood battlefield. The 2 Grand Elders exchanged glances and shook their heads helplessly. However, both of them smiled right after, feeling relieved. It was already a great fortune for the dragon race to have any one of the 2 monster incarnates. The most rare thing was that these 2 monster incarnates of the dragon race were open and honest without any scheming plots or connivery. No matter who won this battle, the rise of the dragon race was inevitable. Seems like the grand ceremony is about to be brought forward. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said with a smile. In my opinion, there's no time like the present. Let's do it today. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said in a deep voice, the most important thing in the grand ceremony of the clan is to be conferred the title of the young master of the dragon race. One of them will definitely win today and that person will be the young master of the dragon race. Alright, let's get the other 3 old fogies out here. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder nodded in agreement. The 2 Grand Elders reared their heads and howled. A high-pitched dragon roar sounded, piercing through metal and cracking rocks and spreading to every corner of the Dragon Bone Valley. Roar! After a brief pause, 3 dragon roars echoed from 3 corners of the Dragon Bone Valley, matching the howls of the 2 elders. In the blink of an eye, another 3 old men appeared in midair. They were the Grand Elders of the horned, winged and hornless dragon lineages who were initially in seclusion. The Grand Elders of all 5 lineages were gathered. What's going on? The Winged Dragon Grand Elder frowned slightly and looked at the 2 figures in the Dragon Blood battlefield. Why? Is there finally someone who dares to challenge Long Tsang? There's no need to alarm us for a battle with a predetermined outcome, right? The Horned Dragon Grand Elder was confused. The 3 Grand Elders had yet to meet Su Zimo, let alone recognize him. Fufu, predetermined outcome? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder rolled his eyes and pointed at Su Zimo's back view. How about a bet? I'll bet on him winning. He continued with a smile, if I win, Old Xio, the mystic flame bead that you obtained 50,000 years ago will belong to me. I'm not betting. The Horned Dragon Grand Elder shuddered and shook his head instinctively. Although he did not know who Su Zimo was, the 5 of them knew one another way too well. When he saw the sly smile on the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder's face, he knew that there was definitely something going on. The Hornless Dragon Grand Elder smiled and asked, "Tell me, what's up with your mysterious behavior?" The Blue Dragon Grand Elder sent a voice transmission and recounted everything simply. Even his speculation with the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder was revealed. For real? When the 3 Grand Elders heard that, they could not contain their emotions and exclaimed instinctively. Let's see. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder pointed at the Dragon Blood battlefield. This battle might prove our guess. Chapter 1207, Battle Commencement. Chapter 1207, Battle Commencement. In the Dragon Blood battlefield, Su Zimo and Long Tsang were already facing one another. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder declared, "Although we can fight to the death in the Dragon Blood battlefield without any reservations, both of you are paragons of our race. It's our loss to see any of you die." Many Dragon Elders nodded in agreement. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder continued, "You can fight to your heart's content in this battle, but you must not use your Essence Spirit secret skills. A fight between Essence Spirits was the most dangerous and one could die at any moment. At that time, they might not even be able to save either one of them in time. With the regeneration capabilities of the dragon race's bloodline, one's body could recover if they were injured. If worse came to worst, there was still an utmost treasure like the primordial divine spring. That's for sure." Long Tsang nodded. "Victory has to be decided in my battle with Long Zhu, not life and death." Su Zimo smiled and nodded as well. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 and the others heaved a sigh of relief. If the Blue Dragon Grand Elder did not mention it, they would have stood out and stopped the two of them from using their Essence Spirit secret skills as well. While the Blue Dragon Grand Elders and the others did not know it, they had witnessed the might of reverse scale personally. Even the young master of the witch race was killed by this Essence Spirit secret skill. Although Long Tsang was a five-clawed divine dragon, it was unknown if he could defend against it. Suddenly, Long Zhong said, "Long Zhu has another dermic art that can't be used either." "What?" The Grand Elders were surprised and asked instinctively. Long Zhong said, "Long Zhu learned a dermic art from somewhere that can reduce one's lifespan." The Horned Dragon Grand Elder frowned slightly. "What's wrong with reducing one's lifespan? Although such a dermic art is rare, it's not that scary." Long Zhong shook his head. Long Zhu's dermic art is different. The effect of this dermic art ignores the other party's cultivation realm. The expressions of the five Grand Elders changed slightly. "Ignore one's cultivation realm? You mean to say that our lifespans will be reduced if he releases this dermic art on us?" The Horned Dragon Grand Elder asked, still in disbelief. "That's right." Long Zhong nodded hurriedly. "That's not all. The lifespan reduction of his dermic art is irreversible. No matter how one recuperates in the future, there's no way of recovering the lost lifespan." The five Grand Elders exchanged glances. That was a little scary. Was there such a domineering dermic art in this world? However, all five of them felt relieved at the thought of Su Zimo's bloodline. Long Zhong did not notice it still and was prepared to strike while the iron was hot. He instigated, "If our other clansmen can cultivate such a powerful dermic art as well, the strength of our race will definitely increase significantly." He did not say that it was his own selfish reasons. Instead, he expressed it as though he was selfless and was considering it for the sake of the dragon race and their fellow clansmen completely. Long Zhong continued with sadness, "I tried to persuade Long Zhu to hand over that dermic art out of goodwill. Unexpectedly, he rejected me without caring about the interests of the dragon race." The five Grand Elders looked grim. Long Zhong was secretly delighted when he saw that. He thought that the five Grand Elders were angered because Su Zimo was hiding something. Long Zhong prepped himself and continued, "This lad is not grateful for our race taking him in at all. He won't even hand over a dermic art. He doesn't even treat us as his clansmen." That was a serious accusation. Many dragons were moved by his words and whispered among themselves. In the Dragon Blood battlefield, Long Tsang frowned and said in a deep voice, "Since that dermic art belongs to Long Zhu, he can hand it over if he wants to. If he doesn't want to, so be it. Elder, there's no need to accuse him of anything." Su Zimo had a calm expression and was indifferent towards the matter, merely waiting for the attitude of the five Grand Elders. The Horned Dragon Grand Elder had a dark expression as he looked at Long Zhong and asked slowly, you were the one who asked him to hand over the dermic art? That's right. Long Zhong nodded hurriedly. Piak. The moment he said that, a crisp sound rang. A red palm print had already appeared on Long Zhong's face. The horned dragon Grand Elder attacked and slapped Long Zhong viciously, saying hatefully, "Who gave you the right?" Piak. It was another slap. What rights do you have to claim a dermic art cultivated by someone else? Piak. A third slap. Why don't you take a look at your bloodline and potential? Even if that dermic art was given to you, do you fucking think you can learn it? The horned dragon Grand Elder cursed as he slapped Long Zhong's mouth. The dragons watched with widened eyes. Elder Long Zhong was way too unlucky today. He had just been slapped a few times by the blue dragon Grand Elder and now, he was beaten up again. Furthermore, the dragons were confused and did not know why Long Zhong was beaten up. Even Long Zhong himself was stunned, let alone them. What's going on today? Where am I? Who am I? Why is everyone slapping me? Long Zhong's head buzzed from the slaps and was already in a mess. There was no way Long Zhong knew that the 5 Grand Elders were worried that Su Zimo would be disgusted by his actions. If Su Zimo were to leave the dragon race, that would be the greatest loss for the dragon race. Scram! The horned dragon Grand Elder ground his teeth and cursed, "Go back and reflect on yourself in front of the wall. Don't come out without my orders." Yes. Long Zhong could only grit his teeth and agree before turning to leave angrily. In the dragon blood battlefield, Long Tsang smiled gently and said, "Long Zhu, you don't have to worry. If you can't use this or that, you will feel restricted and there won't be any point to this battle. If I defeat you, it'll be an unfair victory. No worries." Su Zimo said indifferently, "Even without Baron, you won't be able to win." Actually, even without Long Zhong's suggestion, Su Zimo had no intention of using Baron. Baron's lifespan reduction was way too domineering. If he was dealing with enemies, he naturally had nothing to fear. However, Su Zimo had a good impression of Long Tsang and naturally did not want to cause Long Tsang's lifespan to be wasted for no reason just for the sake of this fight. At the Void Reversion Realm, when he pushed Baron to its limits, it could reach a level where one's lifespan was reduced by 500 years a breath. But now that he was at the Dharma characteristic realm, the power of Baron was doubled. 1,000 years could be reduced with a single breath. Normally speaking, the lifespan of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords was less than 10,000 years. In other words, 10 breaths of Baron could kill a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Long Tsang possessed the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon. Even if he had a long lifespan, he could not withstand the speed of the lifespan reduction. Long Tsang no longer tried persuading Su Zimo. In his opinion, Su Zimo would naturally release that Baron dermic art when he was forced to a dead end. He wanted to witness the power of that dermic art. Battle! Long Tsang hollered and strode forward. Leaping up from the ground, he arrived above Su Zimo's head instantly with a torrential aura. Splash! The sound of a tsunami surged from Long Tsang's body. Tsunami blood was deafening. As a 5-clawed divine dragon, it was not surprising for Long Tsang to cultivate to the tsunami blood realm. The moment he attacked, he did not hold back at all and channeled the power of his bloodline to its limits. He reached out and slapped Su Zimo's head fiercely. Chapter 1208, 9 Demon Kings, Complete Silence. Chapter 1208, 9 Demon Kings, Complete Silence. Powerful. Extremely powerful. That simple attack caused Su Zimo to feel a suffocating pressure. Long Tsang's tsunami blood was almost gushing out of his body and arrived instantly. In terms of bloodline alone, the power released by Long Tsang was even stronger than Di-In. Of course, by now, Su Zimo had undergone a complete transformation and was unlike before. Bang! Boom! Boom! Su Zimo's blood chi surged and his body seemed to be surging with raging tides. He did not retreat at all against Long Tsang, who descended from the skies like a god and punched in reverse against the latter's palm. Bang! The fist and palm collided. The dragons could clearly feel the entire Dragon Bone Valley tremble. The collision of bloodline and physical body released a tremendous amount of energy at that moment. There was a momentary pause and the world seemed to have stopped. Immediately, that energy fluctuation burst forth and spread in all directions with a terrifying aura. A single clash was enough to cause such a commotion, and stirs broke out within the dragons. The dragon race loved to fight and was naturally excited about such a rare battle throughout history. Finally, someone from our race can fight against Long Tsang. That's far from it. The two of them merely exchanged a single round. Who do you guys think will win this battle? That was a question that all the dragons were guessing. I'll bet on Long Zhu. He has awakened 3 divine powers and undergone 4 baptisms of his bloodline and body. It will definitely be Long Tsang, there's no doubt about that. Although Long Zhu has awakened 3 divine powers and underwent 4 transformations, don't forget that his bloodline is impure. A 5-clawed divine dragon is innately superior to dragons, let alone dragons with impure bloodlines. That's right. Also, don't forget that Long Zhu has just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and Long Tsang is already at perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Most of the dragons, including the elders of the dragon race, were still biased towards Long Tsang. Only the 5 grand elders in midair remained silent. If their guess was correct, it would be extremely difficult for Long Tsang to win this battle. Long Tsang's only shot at victory was his ability to conjure his complete true form, while Long Zhu was unable to for now. In that short period of time, Su Zimo and Long Tsang had already fought for more than 10 rounds in the Dragon Blood battlefield. They were collisions in terms of strength. Although it looked simple, crude and savage, it was extremely dangerous. If any strike were to land, the other party would be severely injured. In the eyes of the dragons, the two of them seemed to be on par. However, on the battlefield, Long Tsang had another feeling that he was getting more alarmed the longer they fought. Right now, he had already pushed his power of blood chi to its limits, but he could not gain any advantage still. On the contrary, each time Su Zimo attacked, his blood chi would surge with a boundless might, his strength was increasing exponentially instead. How could this be? Long Tsang's heart skipped a beat. He possessed the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon and was a king of the dragon race with an extremely strong bloodline. How could he be suppressed by someone else? More importantly, Long Tsang believed that he was invincible in melee combat. However, he could not gain any advantage against Su Zimo. Su Zimo would reveal his melee combat techniques from time to time, tough, gentle, swift, agile and ever-changing, even he was troubled by them. Long Tsang felt that he was not facing a dragon. It was the king of all demons. Long Tsang realized that if this continued, he might be the one unable to hold out. Good, good, good. Long Tsang could still speak despite the massive battle as he praised loudly, "Ever since I awakened the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon, you're the first person who has forced me to this extent." Roar. He reared his head and howled into the skies, letting out a resounding dragon roar. Immediately after, an extremely terrifying power burst forth from his body and his blood chi surged, forming swiftly behind him. A menacing and massive divine dragon descended upon the world. The divine dragon was covered in green scales and had a sharp gaze. It had a head, legs and sharp claws. Most importantly, there were 5 dragon claws beneath the divine dragon's abdomen. A 5-clawed divine dragon had descended. A unique pressure of the dragon race spread. Against that pressure, the dragons felt shudders and lowered their heads instinctively. None of the dragons dared to match the 5-clawed divine dragon behind Long Tsang. Bloodline phenomenon. A dragon elder said sternly, to think that Long Zhu's combat strength would be at this level, and even forced out Long Tsang's bloodline phenomenon. In that case, the battle is about to end. That's not for sure. Illumination Dragon Elder 4 shook his head. From what I know, Long Zhu has also cultivated a bloodline phenomenon. There are differences in strength between bloodline phenomenons. Even if Long Zhu manages to cultivate a bloodline phenomenon, can his bloodline phenomenon withstand the impact of a five-clawed divine dragon? Another dragon elder pouted his lips in disapproval. On the battlefield. The moment Long Tsang released his bloodline phenomenon, scarlet demonic chi rumbled around Su Zimo, forming menacing, lifelike ancient demon kings one after another. Wild bovine demon king. Stone bear demon king. Anaconda demon king. Sanguine ape demon king. Divine steed demon king. Hell tiger demon king. Wind leopard demon king. 7 demon kings had appeared. The bloodlines of those demon kings were extremely ordinary. However, they were not disadvantaged against the five-clawed divine dragon. What are those? Why would Long Zhu possess a bloodline phenomenon as such? The many dragon leaders frowned. Right then, another massive demon king descended after the 7 demon kings. Its body was slender and created raging tides with a burning gaze and unrestrained might. The 8th demon king, desolate ocean dragon king. The 8 demon kings exuded an ancient aura. Even though they were merely phenomenons, they still emitted a strong blood stench. No one knew how much blood the 8 demon kings had spilled. Long Tsang's five-clawed divine dragon was already disadvantaged against the descent of 8 demon kings. However, be it Long Tsang or the five-clawed divine dragon behind him, not only did they not retreat in fear against such a confrontation, they even released an even stronger battle intent. Roar! Long Tsang opened his mouth and the five-clawed divine dragon behind him opened its mouth at the same time. The man and dragon roared at the same time with a thunderous sound. This was the authority of a five-clawed divine dragon that was not to be challenged. Everyone could sense that Long Tsang and the five-clawed divine dragon behind him were truly enraged. Right then, the scarlet demonic chi behind Su Zimo surged and another massive object was formed. The dragons had just seen this massive creature before. It was the phenomenon that descended when Su Zimo awakened his 3rd divine power. To think that the phenomenon would become Su Zimo's bloodline phenomenon. The 9th demon king, sea calming turtle. The 9 demon kings descended and surrounded Su Zimo. Long Tsang's aura had just risen when it was suppressed rapidly. Roar! Su Zimo opened his mouth and the 9 demon kings opened their mouths at the same time, letting out earth-shaking roars. The dragons were silent. Chapter 1209, that's all? Chapter 1209, that's all? The 9 demon kings descended and glared at the five-clawed divine dragon not far away with murderous auras like fiends. Long Tsang's bloodline phenomenon was completely disadvantaged in terms of aura. Alright, let's see which of your phenomenons can defend against my five-clawed divine dragon. Long Tsang hollered and the five-clawed divine dragon behind him roared. It soared into the air and lunged towards Su Zimo with a shocking aura. Before Su Zimo gave any orders, the 9 demon kings surrounding him charged forward. 10 massive demon beasts fought in midair. Although they were phenomenons derived from blood chi, each collision would cause a series of explosions, causing the void to tremble and the weather to change. The moment they exchanged blows, the five-clawed divine dragon was disadvantaged. Although the five-clawed divine dragon was strong and could kill 3 or 4 demon king phenomenons with ease, there were a full 9 demon kings that surrounded it. Furthermore, among the 9 demon kings, the combat strength of the sea calming turtle was almost comparable to the five-clawed divine dragon. Poof! The five-clawed divine dragon roared and extended its claws, ripping the wild bovine demon king's body apart. Instantly, the phenomenon dissipated. Of the 9 demon kings, there were 8 remaining. As for the five-clawed divine dragon's back, it was sliced by the wind leopard demon king as well. If not for the protection of the indestructible dragon scales, that attack might have ripped the five-clawed divine dragon into 2. The fight between the phenomenons was extremely tragic. In less than a dozen breaths, 3 Demon King phenomenons on Su Zimo's side dissipated. As for the 5-clawed divine dragon, it was covered in wounds and was in a tragic state. How could this be? Could the 5-clawed divine dragon of our dragon race not defeat these demon beasts with inferior bloodlines? The dragons were dumbfounded. Nobody expected this outcome of the bloodline battle. All the dragons could tell that although 3 of the 9 demon kings were dead, the 5-clawed divine dragon's stamina was depleted and its aura was weakened, even the glow on its body had dimmed significantly. If this continued, the 5-clawed divine dragon would definitely lose. Long Song had a grim expression as he swiped his wrist gently, causing a wisp of incomparably pure dragon blood to appear. He chanted in dragon language and conjured hand seals, directing the wisp of dragon blood onto the 5-clawed divine dragon phenomenon. The 5-clawed divine dragon shuddered and its aura surged. Roar! The 5-clawed divine dragon roared and regained its divine power. It attacked once more and released its divine might, tearing the wind leopard demon king into pieces. Although it was only a wisp of bloodline, it possessed an extremely terrifying power. That was the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon. By using a secret skill to refine his bloodline and fuse it with the 5-clawed divine dragon phenomenon, it was akin to Longsong granting a rebirth to his phenomenon. Even so, the difference between them was still great. There were still 5 Demon King phenomenons on Su Zimo's side. Before long, another one was destroyed. However, cracks started appearing on the body of the 5-clawed divine dragon and it was on the brink of collapse. Finally, the sea-calming turtle collided against the 5-clawed divine dragon. Both phenomenons dispersed at the same time. As for Su Zimo's side, there were only 3 phenomenons left: Sanguine Ape Demon King, Hell Tiger Demon King and Desolate Ocean Dragon King. The 3 phenomenons did not stop and charged towards Longsong, who was not far away. All right. Longsong did not show the slightest bit of fear. Instead, he praised with a bright gaze and rose against 3 gigantic beings. Bang! 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 He was using his body to fight against Su Zimo's bloodline phenomenon. Both parties collided violently. After a brief pause, a figure crashed onto the ground like a meteor, creating a human-shaped pit with dust and gravel. However, before long, the figure leaped up. It was Longsong. He looked a little wretched, but it was clear that he was not severely injured. The 3 phenomenons in midair had already turned into spots of light that scattered into the void. Longsong had destroyed Su Zimo's 3 bloodline phenomenons with his body. How terrifying was his strength! I knew that Longsong wouldn't be defeated so easily. Longsong seems fine. Instead, his aura is getting stronger. Let's wait and see. Longsong's counterattack is about to begin. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had never been in such a sorry state. The greater the impact he receives now, the sharper his counterattack will be. Many dragon elders heaved a sigh of relief. Unlike the dragons, the elders were calm. They could tell that although Longsong could shatter Su Zimo's 3 bloodline phenomenons, it was only partly because he was strong enough. More importantly, the 3 Demon King phenomenons were almost depleted as well. Ha 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 ha. Longsong roared in laughter. That's all there is to your bloodline phenomenon. Although there are many demon beasts, they are nothing but small fries. Is that so? Su Zimo smiled calmly without retorting. Longsong was indeed strong. The last time he saw an existence that could take on phenomenons with his body was the god race leader he encountered in Myriad Phenomenon City. However, the true terror of Su Zimo's bloodline phenomenon was not the initial 9 demon kings. All of a sudden, behind Su Zimo, demonic chi surged and a blood-colored butterfly gradually appeared. There were 2 bright moons imprinted on the wings that resembled a pair of eyes. The blood-colored butterfly was only around 10 feet wide and was way too tiny compared to the 9 previous Demon King phenomenons. However, after the blood-colored butterfly descended, the entire Dragon Bone Valley fell into a dead silence. A terrifying aura spread. The dragons felt their hearts skip a beat. Even when the 9 demon kings and 5-clawed divine dragon phenomenons descended, they were merely shocked. However, that blood-colored butterfly made them feel fear. Not to mention the dragons below, even the many dragon elders who were watching in midair gasped. What is that demon beast? A dragon elder's voice trembled. The 5 grand elders of the dragon race had grim expressions as they fixed their gazes on the blood-colored butterfly. Even with their experience, they could not identify the origin of the blood-colored butterfly. There's another bloodline phenomenon? Long Song's expression changed as well, and he was on guard. The butterfly looked extremely weak and had yet to materialize. It was only in a half-illusory state and was almost negligible compared to the torrential aura of the previous 9 demon kings. Even so, Long Song still felt a strong sense of danger. That was despite the fact that he was dozens of feet away from the blood-colored butterfly. That's all there is to my bloodline phenomenon? Su Zimo smiled. Suddenly, the wings of the blood-colored butterfly flapped gently. Its movements were so subtle that it was almost impossible to notice. However, that slight flap caused a terrifying storm. The void around Long Song distorted, changed, collapsed, and caved in. Long Song's eyes widened and he could only last for a moment. As though he was struck by lightning, he was sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood, tumbling into the distance motionlessly. The place fell into an uproar. Chapter 12:10, Complete Suppression. Chapter 12:10, Complete Suppression. As a 5-clawed divine dragon, he was sent flying by a gentle flap of a blood-colored butterfly's wings and spat out blood. What sort of a bloodline phenomenon was that? Long Zhu's bloodline was impure. How did he manage to cultivate such a terrifying phenomenon? Could it be that his bloodline was even stronger and nobler than the 5-clawed divine dragon? The scene before them had completely exceeded their expectations. Even the dragons who had initially thought highly of Su Zimo did not expect Long Song to lose so thoroughly. He was severely injured by Long Zhu's bloodline phenomenon. Our young master sure has many secrets. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder could not help but send a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and lamented. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder nodded as well. That's right. At the very least, the power of this bloodline phenomenon has far exceeded our expectations. In the dragon blood battlefield, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief and calmed his bloodline. The blood-colored butterfly behind him dissipated as well. He was prepared to leave. Not everyone could defend against the attack of the blood-colored butterfly. Of course, he did not continue his pursuit. Although Long Song was severely injured, his body and bloodline would recover before long. Has the outcome of this battle been decided? That should be the case. Long Song is motionless and looks like he fainted. The dragons were still unwilling to believe as they fixed their gazes on the figure sprawled on the ground. Cough. Suddenly, a soft cough sounded. The figure crawled up slowly from the ground and looked extremely wretched. His hair was disheveled and his clothes were tattered. However, his eyes were bright and his fighting spirit was not diminished. The dragons cheered. In the hearts of the dragons, they were still unwilling to see their only 5-clawed divine dragon suffer a crushing defeat just like that. Wiping away the blood at the corner of his mouth, Long Song looked at Su Zimo in the distance and grinned. Don't tell me you think that you can defeat me with a single bloodline phenomenon? Su Zimo paused in his tracks with a hint of admiration in his eyes. There were not many people who could withstand the attack of the blood butterfly with their bodies. There were even less people who could stand up after enduring it. As a 5-clawed divine dragon, Long Song displayed terrifying defense and regeneration capabilities. That was the power of his bloodline. What tricks do you have? Use them all. I'll take all of them. Su Zimo had immense respect for Long Song and smiled gently. The battle has just begun. Long Song hollered and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body. Under countless gazes, his entire body expanded. In the blink of an eye, a divine dragon dozens of feet long appeared where he stood. It was covered in green scales that shone with a cold glint. Above the menacing dragon's head was a pair of dragon horns, and the spikes on its back were sharp with 5 claws beneath its abdomen. A complete true body of the dragon race. Long Tsang hovered in midair and looked down at Su Zimo on the battlefield. Compared to his massive dragon body, Su Zimo was as insignificant as an ant. However, the ant raised its head and met the gaze of the 5-clawed divine dragon. In terms of aura, it was not inferior at all. Furthermore, his bloodline was even slightly suppressed by Su Zimo. Others might not be able to sense it, but he could. This was an extremely unusual phenomenon. Under normal circumstances, a 5-clawed divine dragon was a king of the dragon race and had an extremely strong bloodline. There was no way it could be suppressed by the bloodline of another dragon. However, the battle between the two of them was not over yet, and Long Tsang did not think too much about it. At the same time, Su Zimo's body underwent some changes as well. His body rose rapidly and was now 30 feet tall. Scarlet scales grew on his skin and the temperature in the void climbed rapidly. Against Long Tsang, who had transformed into a complete dragon, Su Zimo did not dare to be careless and reverted to his half-dragon form. That was the only dragon form he could conjure up till now. Almost at the same time, Long Tsang descended from the skies and charged down fiercely. Su Zimo leaped up and defied the heavens. Boom! 2 dragon claws collided with a loud bang. Su Zimo's body descended rapidly like a meteor, crashing onto the ground. Right after, he rose from the ground at an even faster speed and charged forward once more. Bang! 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 The two of them clashed repeatedly and let out a series of explosions. The void trembled repeatedly and dust billowed in a terrifying manner. Pust! Long Zhu is really strong. That's right. Even though he's only in his half-dragon form, he's able to fight head-on against Long Tsang in his complete dragon form. What would happen if he could conjure a complete dragon form? Why is there no change to Long Zhu's right hand? It's still the same as a human's palm. Right then, a dragon noticed this abnormality and revealed a confused expression. In midair, the 5 grand elders exchanged glances and nodded. There's no mistake. There's only a single possibility why he can fight against a 5-clawed divine dragon in his half-dragon form. Yes, it seems like the reason why the young master is unable to conjure a complete true body is because his bloodline has yet to fuse perfectly with the divine phoenix bone. I wonder where that opportunity lies. The 5 grand elders conversed secretly. In the skies above the battlefield, Long Tsang charged forward once more. Raising his dragon horns, he charged toward Su Zimo's chest. Among the dragon race, their fangs and claws were the sharpest. However, the toughest part of the dragon race was the pair of dragon horns on their heads. Given the combat strength of Long Tsang's bloodline, even some low-level mighty figure dermic weapons could not withstand the impact of his dragon horns, let alone a body of flesh and blood. Furthermore, once the innate divine powers of the dragon horns were awakened, there were many other mysteries to them. Su Zimo did not dodge or avoid. He reached out and grabbed Long Tsang's horns without budging at all. However, the impact of Long Tsang's attack was too strong. In midair, Su Zimo had no strength and his body retreated continuously. Rise! Su Zimo's blood chi surged and he growled deeply. Gripping the horns of Long Tsang with both hands, large tendons and muscles bulged beneath the scarlet scales on his arms. An incomparably powerful force burst forth. Right in front of the dragons, Su Zimo lifted Long Tsang's massive body that was dozens of feet tall and swung it through the air in an arc, smashing it heavily onto the ground on the other side. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The ground of the dragon blood battlefield was smashed apart, forming a ravine dozens of feet long that caused Long Tsang's body to sink in. The dragons were shocked and winced, feeling their teeth ache. Roar! Long Tsang roared and struggled to stand up. If it was any other dragon, they would have been paralyzed after suffering such a serious injury. However, the five-clawed divine dragon was way too strong. Despite receiving such a blow, he was still able to stand up. The aura around him turned increasingly violent as he shook his dragon head, wanting to break free from Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo did not give him that chance at all. Before Long Tsang was fully awake, Su Zimo exerted strength in his arms once more and a scorching aura surged from his nose and mouth. Su Zimo lifted Long Tsang's body once more and smashed it to the other side. Boom! It was yet another deafening sound. The mouths of the dragons twitched. The entire Dragon Bone Valley shuddered. This was a complete suppression of strength. Chapter 12:11, Divine Powers Fight. Chapter 12:11, Divine Powers Fight. The dragons were extremely excited at the sight of this massive battle. The dragon race advocated melee combat the most and focused on violence and savageness without requiring much technique. And now, Su Zimo had pushed that violence to its limits. The dragon race advocated strength as supremacy. Up till this point of the battle, Su Zimo's methods had already subdued many dragons. Of course, there were still some dragons who were unwilling to believe what happened. Could the five-clawed divine dragon that had transformed into a complete dragon not defeat Long Zhu? Crackle. Right then, the horns on Long Tsang's head flashed with streaks of lightning, releasing an intense power of thunder. Caught off guard, Su Zimo's expression changed and he felt his hands go numb. An incomparably strong electric current surged into his body and destroyed his life force. Instinctively, Su Zimo released his grip. Long Tsang seized the opportunity to escape and roared before soaring into the air. Power of thunder. Heavens, Long Tsang has awakened the power of thunder. As expected of a five-clawed divine dragon. To think that Long Tsang would be hiding such a powerful trump card. A series of exclamations sounded from the dragons. Among the dragon race, apart from the powers of metal, wood, water, fire and earth, there were other powers that could awaken. The power of thunder was one of them. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder and the others turned around. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder smiled faintly and looked pleased. No matter what, Long Tsang was from the Blue Dragon lineage. The stronger Long Tsang was, the more pride he felt. This was comprehended when Long Tsang entered the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said, to be precise, Long Tsang awakened 2 divine powers at the Dharma characteristic realm as well and underwent 2 body transformations. The Horned Dragon Grand Elder nodded. No wonder. If not for those 2 transformations, Long Tsang would have lost long ago. On the battlefield. Ha 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 ha. This was the first time that Long Tsang made Su Zimo suffer. He could not help but feel delighted and burst into laughter, shouting, Long Zhu, it doesn't feel good being electrocuted, right? Puny tricks. Su Zimo laughed as well and his eyes shone brightly. Suddenly, 2 balls of flames burned and shot towards Long Tsang with 2 scarlet beams of light. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, the Illumination Dragon I had transformed into a divine power completely. Thunder Dragon Descent. Long Tsang did not dare to be careless as lightning coiled around his horns. Instantly, a divine thunder dragon was formed and charged towards the 2 scarlet divine lights. Boom! The 2 divine powers collided and a gigantic semicircular fluctuation spread out, emitting a blinding light as air currents surged. Long Tsang fell from midair. Su Zimo retreated a few steps in succession as well. This divine power fight was even. Good, good, good. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he praised in succession, here's another divine power from me. He roared into the skies and a divine light burst forth from his glabella, entering the firmaments. Boom! Immediately after, a loud bang sounded from the skies. The clouds exploded and a gigantic, thick stone pillar descended slowly from the skies. The stone pillar was grayish-white and there was a 5-clawed divine dragon climbing on it. It gave off an ancient aura and possessed a rampant might that could suppress the dragons. Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. A series of cries sounded from the dragons. Who would have thought that there would be a divine power within the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar? That's right. Long Zhu received a baptism in his human form by accident and obtained the inheritance of this divine power. When I enter the Dharma characteristic realm, I'll definitely choose to undergo baptism in my human form as well. Many dragons who did not understand what happened thought that the reason why Su Zimo received the inheritance of the divine power was because he had not transformed into a complete dragon. The stone pillar looked exactly the same as the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. However, it was dozens of times larger than the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar and its aura was much more terrifying and berserk. Even Longsong, who was dozens of feet long, was like a slender snake beneath the stone pillar, as though it could be squashed into sludge. A huge shadow loomed over. As the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar approached, the pressure became increasingly clear. In fact, many dragons felt suffocated and their faces turned pale. If that was the case for the dragons watching in the vicinity, it was easy to imagine the pressure Longsong was under on the battlefield against the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. Divine Dragon's Claw. The dragon claws beneath Longsong's abdomen shone with cold lights and surged with the power of divine powers. This was an innate divine power awakened by the blue dragon lineage. The combined attack of 4 claws was enough to tear everything apart. Shoo! 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 4 dragon claws swiped viciously at the stone pillar that was crushing down. Squeak, squeak. The dragon claws swiped across the stone pillar, causing stone fragments to fly everywhere with an ear-piercing sound. Longsong's claws snapped and fresh blood flowed, dyeing the stone pillar red. Although the divine dragon's claws were strong, they could not defend against the power of the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar. Divine Dragon's Tail Whip. Longsong released another secret skill of the dragon race. Shrugging his body that was dozens of feet long, the strength in his body started from the dragon's head and passed through its spine to its tail before being flung out viciously. Boom! The dragon tail collided against the stone pillar. Cracks finally appeared on the stone pillar and the power of divine powers began to dissipate. It was even worse for Longsong. His 4 claws were dripping with blood and most of the scales on his tail had already fallen off. He slammed heavily onto the ground and coughed out blood. Even so, Longsong's eyes shone brightly. He managed to block it. At that moment, there were no thoughts about victory or loss in his mind. All he knew was that with the help of this battle, his combat strength had increased once more and he had a breakthrough. He could even sense the aura of the conjoint body realm. Ha 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 ha. It was worth it. Although Longsong was drenched in blood, he was still laughing like a lunatic. Let the battle end here. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said in a deep voice. It was clear who was stronger in the current situation. I haven't lost yet. Longsong shook his head gently and glared at Su Zimo, who was not far away, prepared to launch his final attack. You can still fight? Su Zimo asked. The Divine Dragon Claw was merely a divine power awakened by the Blue Dragon lineage. Longsong said slowly, as a 5-clawed divine dragon, I have a final move for this divine power that I awakened. I'll only acknowledge you as the young master if you can take this move. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder seemed to have thought of something and retreated once more. The strongest killing move of a 5-clawed divine dragon was on his 5th claw. Kill. Longsong lunged forward once more. Ignoring the blood flowing down his body, the 5th dragon claw beneath his abdomen extended. Its bones were menacing and its sharp claws could penetrate everything. An extremely terrifying aura emanated from the 5th dragon claw. The entire void was penetrated by the 5th claw. Longsong's counterattack. The reason why he braved the danger of being severely injured and withstood the Ancestral Dragon Divine Pillar without using the divine power was because of that final attack. This was his greatest trump card. Chapter 12:12, Reign over 5 Lineages. Chapter 12:12, Reign over 5 Lineages. Fifth Claw. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The menacing claw that crushed over with a terrifying aura made his heart skip a beat. There were truly not many powers of the same cultivation realm that could make him feel shudders. His physique and bloodline were strong. After transforming into his half-dragon form, he was covered in scarlet scales and his defense was extremely strong. Even connate dermic weapons of the same level could not hurt him. However, that claw was extremely terrifying. It was enough to rip his body apart. Su Zimo extended his right hand slowly with scarlet flames burning on it as an extremely terrifying power spread out. Divine Phoenix Bone. The other dragons could not make out anything, but the 5 grand elders of the dragon race exclaimed internally. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, Su Zimo's transformation was in all aspects and his overall combat strength increased. More importantly, the instant he entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he sensed the power of the Divine Phoenix Bone. The power of the Divine Phoenix Bone was extremely terrifying. However, prior to this, Su Zimo had no connection to the Divine Phoenix Bone and he could not control its power either. Each time the Divine Phoenix Bone was activated, it was with external help. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, he could already release the power of the Divine Phoenix Bone on his own. Activate the Divine Phoenix's Claw. Against Long Sang's incoming 5th claw, a thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. He was prepared to fight it head-on with the Divine Phoenix's Claw. However, there was a hidden danger. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, Su Zimo had yet to truly release the Divine Phoenix's Claw and it was difficult for him to gauge his mastery of it. Long Sang was in an extremely bad condition right now. If he were to miscalculate and end up killing the latter. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before the power within the Divine Phoenix Bone dissipated. What's Long Zhu doing? The Blue Dragon Grand Elder noticed this detail and frowned slightly. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said in a deep voice, "Is Long Zhu not prepared to retaliate and is instead defending with all his might?" However, the power of the 5th claw is extraordinary. It's too difficult to defend against it. The Horned Dragon Grand Elder shook his head. In the Dragon Blood battlefield. Waving his hands, Su Zimo drew a semicircle on both sides of his body before gathering it in front of his chest. His fingers shifted as he conjured hand seals and drew in front of him. At the same time, his glabella shone and a divine light shot into his hands. Condense. Su Zimo's gaze intensified. Buzz. An incomparably mighty divine power descended. Heaven and earth rumbled. Su Zimo's hands shifted in front of him and conjured a gigantic stone shield. It was rough and ancient with curved patterns etched on it in a mysterious manner. The stone shield resembled the shell of a divine turtle. This is. The dragons widened their eyes. Even the 5 grand elders were shocked. They had never seen such a divine power before. Furthermore, that divine power seemed like it had nothing to do with the dragon race. Could this be the 3rd divine power that Long Zhu comprehended? The Blue Dragon Grand Elder asked softly. That should be the case. The other 4 Grand Elders nodded. The 5 Grand Elders were right, that divine power was the first divine power in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. It came from the sea calming turtle and was known as the Spirit Turtle Shield. According to the Divine Power section, if one could comprehend this divine power completely, they could reach the peak of defense. If he wanted to comprehend the Spirit Turtle Shield completely, he would have to comprehend the patterns on the surface that contained endless secrets. The patterns on the Spirit Turtle Shield intertwined densely. At that moment, only a small portion of it shone faintly. If all the patterns on the surface were to light up, it would mean that the divine power was cultivated to its perfected stage. The moment the Spirit Turtle Shield was formed, Long Sang's 5th claw struck the stone shield and let out a piercing sound. Sparks flew everywhere. The 2 of them were motionless. The entire world seemed to have stopped. The dragons held their breaths. All of them knew that the outcome of this battle could very well be decided in that instant. Roar! Finally, a pained expression appeared on Long Tsang's face as he let out a tragic cry. Blood dripped from his claws as he fell back. Bang! His body that was dozens of feet long slammed heavily onto the battlefield, causing dust to fly everywhere. On the other side, Su Zimo held his shield with both hands and did not budge a single step at all. Victory was decided. Long Zhu shall be the young master. Long Tsang let out a long breath. After saying that, he could no longer hold on and fainted on the spot. He was severely injured in succession and it was already his limit to be able to last till this point. The dragons were motionless as they looked at the figure standing in the center of the battlefield in a daze for a long time. Even some of the elders of the dragon race could not believe that Long Tsang was completely defeated, let alone them. What are you waiting for? The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said in a deep voice, bring Long Tsang to the primordial divine spring and heal him quickly. Even if Long Tsang was defeated, he was still a five-clawed divine dragon of the dragon race. Su Zimo was the only one above him and nothing must happen to him. Some Blue Dragon Elders moved one after another and brought Long Tsang with them to the primordial divine spring. There's no doubt about this battle. The Horned Dragon Grand Elder lamented. Don't forget, there's even two powerful dermic arts that the young master has yet to use. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said, in my opinion, he has more trump cards than those two dermic arts. At the very least, he did not reveal his divine phoenix bone. What are you saying so much for? Hurry and get down to business. The Hornless Dragon Grand Elder urged. The 5 Grand Elders were in high spirits and exchanged glances with smiles. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder declared, everyone, the internal ceremony will continue. However, our young master has already been decided. Does anyone have any objections? No. After a brief pause, the dragons cheered. Among them, the Illumination Dragon Lineage shouted the loudest with an excited expression. The dragon race believed that the strong reigned supreme. If Su Zimo could defeat Long Tsang, he would be the young master of the dragon race and no one would question that. All right. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder nodded. Long Zhu shall revert to his original name of Long Mo and he will be the young master of our race to reign over the 5 lineages. Young master. Young master. Young master. The dragons of the 5 lineages cheered in unison. Standing in the dragon blood battlefield, Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and enjoyed this moment, feeling emotional. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, his combat strength increased exponentially and he could even kill conjoint body mighty figures with his many trump cards. Even against a half-martial ancestor, he could protect himself. He was no longer the existence 10 years ago who barely survived after his body was crippled by a single strike of a half-martial ancestor. Unknowingly, he had already arrived at this point. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had experienced countless dangers along the way. The path he crossed was like a bottomless abyss that was extremely treacherous. Although she was still untouchable, he was relieved that he was one step closer to the figure in his memories. I wonder how things are with the Green Lotus true body and if there are any opportunities for him to enter the Dharma characteristic realm. Su Zimo muttered softly. He did not know that his Green Lotus true body had entered the Tao inheritance ground. At that moment, the battle was over and he began to summon the Green Lotus true body in his heart. Chapter 12-13, Twilight Years. Chapter 12-13, Twilight Years. In the inheritance ground, Stone Statue Cemetery. The heart of the Green Lotus true body stirred. As though he sensed something, he woke up from his cultivation comprehension and received the information from the dragon true body. Both true bodies were Su Zimo and their minds were connected, there was no difference. The Green Lotus true body smiled gently when it sensed the joy of the dragon true body. The dragon true body cultivated smoothly and obtained an opportunity to become the young master of the dragon race and reign over the 5 lineages. It was a firm foothold, and the Green Lotus true body no longer had to worry about his counterpart. The Green Lotus true body was in no hurry to enter the Dharma characteristic realm. Or rather, the reason why he came to the Tao inheritance ground was not because he wanted his cultivation to advance, but because he wanted to deduce the martial Tao. In truth, from the moment he arrived at the Tao inheritance ground, the Green Lotus true body had already prepared for the worst. That was, the failure of the deduction. To create a grand Tao unlike the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Taoists such that mortals without spirit roots could cultivate, how difficult was that? Throughout history, countless wise sages and experts exhausted their entire lives to no avail. That was the case for the mighty figure of Tum's sect in the ancient battlefield as well. However, Su Zimo was only a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. He knew very well that this was a path of no return. Since he was already on it, he could only continue until the end of his life. However, he did not regret it. In fact, Su Zimo was mentally prepared for the fact that his deduction would fail and his Green Lotus true body would pass away at the end of its lifespan. That was the worst possible as well as the most likely outcome. Su Zimo severed his connection with his dragon true body and immersed himself in the cultivation technique of half-martial ancestor instant, comprehending and verifying it repeatedly. Even though he cultivated the cultivation techniques of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects, he had no clue how to deduce the martial Tao immediately. What he wanted to do was to comprehend all the 30-odd inheritances in the cemetery and memorize them. He wanted to fuse the essence of the cultivation techniques of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects and find a possible path. He wanted to find a possible path to alter fate. Cultivation was endless. It was the same day after day. It had only been 3 years on Tianhuang mainland, slightly more than 1,000 days. However, Su Zimo had already spent more than 1,000 years in the cemetery beneath the stone statue of half-martial ancestor instant due to the flow of time there. Prior to this, Su Zimo was only more than 100 years old. For void reversions 100 years old was equivalent to a youth. But now, after more than 1,000 years, Su Zimo had already become a young man at the void reversion realm. He had never cultivated for such a long time. However, the 1,000 years were not wasted after all. In the stone statue cemetery, he had already comprehended more than 30 ancient inheritances of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects, including the immense Heaven's Sea Burial Secret Manual, Apocalyptic Heavenly Fiend Manual, Great Might Heavenly Dragon Bodhisattva Sutra and so on. The Tao inheritance ground was a world of its own. It was impossible for his cultivation to advance here. Although Su Zimo's cultivation had not improved after more than 1,000 years, his combat strength had already reached an extremely terrifying level after comprehending more than 30 inheritances. The 30-odd stone statues had been passed down from the ancient era. Nobody had entered this place before. Anyone who could obtain any of those inheritances would be able to dominate the world. However, Su Zimo managed to comprehend all the inheritances here. He was the first in history. Under normal circumstances, after obtaining an inheritance, the other stone statues would no longer view this person as their successor. The reason why more than 30 stone statues chose Su Zimo was not only because he crossed the three tribulations domain. More than that, it was because he had established his Tao heart here 10 years ago to impart martial arts to all living beings. Among the 30-odd stone statues, there were still remnant consciousnesses of ancient mighty figures. Those remnant consciousnesses wanted to do everything they could to help Su Zimo. After leaving behind the inheritances, the remnant consciousnesses did not disperse. They wanted to see the final outcome as well. However, time was merciless. Even true life could not withstand the passage of time, let alone remnant consciousnesses. After more than 1,000 years, there were only a few remnant consciousnesses that remained and accompanied Su Zimo. It was relatively simple to comprehend those inheritances. The true difficulty lies in the deduction later on. Su Zimo assumed a lotus position with his eyes closed. He recalled the cultivation of his life and tried his best to search for an opportunity. Time flew like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years passed in the stone statue cemetery. Only slightly more than 6 years had passed in Tianhuang mainland. However, Su Zimo had spent more than 2,000 years here. After more than 2,000 years, Su Zimo was already equivalent to a middle-aged void reversion. His face had matured and there was a hint of age in his eyes. In the cemetery, even the few remnant consciousnesses that remained and accompanied him dissipated with indignance. In the end, they could not endure through it. Su Zimo's eyes were slightly red as he bowed deeply towards the 30-odd stone statues. Seniors, don't worry. Even if I have to exhaust my lifespan, I'll definitely deduce a martial Tao and change the fates of the masses. Nobody answered him. He was the only one left in the cemetery. It was as though he was going to be alone on that path for all eternity. Su Zimo took a deep breath and composed himself before continuing to deduce. He had gained quite a bit in the past 1,000 years and had found some clues. Actually, it was impossible to create a complete martial Tao. His cultivation realm was only at the void reversion realm. However, it was relatively easier if he merely wanted to allow mortals without spirit roots to cultivate. Su Zimo did not have a spirit root and started off with demonic cultivation. There was an extremely important realm for both immortality and demonic cultivation, core formation. It was similar to how the different Taos were different means to the same end. Core formation was an insurmountable realm. After forming a core, one could form their own spirit through demonic cultivation. Immortal cultivators could create essence spirits that were similar. In other words, if he could create a cultivation technique and allow mortals without spirit roots to form their cores without taking on demon form, it would be equivalent to settling the most critical aspect of deducing the martial Tao. That was because one would cultivate an essence spirit after forming a core. The cultivation of an essence spirit would break free from the shackles of the spirit root and one would be able to comprehend heaven and earth with their essence spirit. Su Zimo continued to deduce based on that line of thought. Time slowly passed. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years passed. Su Zimo stood motionlessly at the foot of the stone statue. His body was covered in dust and his original green robes could no longer be seen. It had only been 9 years in the outside world. However, Su Zimo was already more than 3,000 years old. Over the years, he had never rested and had been constantly deducing and comprehending. He failed countless times but he never gave up. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years passed. Su Zimo was already more than 4,000 years old. The lifespan of a void reversion was only 5,000 years. At more than 4,000 years old, it meant that he was in his later years and his blood qi was starting to deteriorate, entering a twilight state. At that moment, Su Zimo's hair had already turned grayish-white and rested on his shoulders. There were also some wrinkles on his face. The cruelty of time was unstoppable. Chapter 12:14, Half of the Martial Sutra. Chapter 12:14, Half of the Martial Sutra. Su Zimo opened his eyes with a hint of vicissitude. Repeated deduction day after day for 4,000 years, this was an immense torture for anyone. There was no one accompanying him on that path, it was dark and lonely without any light. He did not know where the end point was either. If it was anyone else, they would have broken down mentally, unable to endure it. However, Su Zimo's Tao heart that was established here was unshakable. He could only survive till now after passing the test of the 3 tribulations domain. Even so, his Tao heart wavered. After more than 4,000 years, there was still no conclusion to his deduction of the martial Tao. Su Zimo could sense that he was infinitesimally close to the final secret, but he was still a step away. That single step could be an insurmountable chasm. Of course, there was another possibility. The direction he chose to deduce was wrong from the beginning. Deducing a Tao from scratch was like a dot that could spread endlessly with boundless possibilities. If a mistake was made from the start, it could carry on and lead one further and further away from the end point. A gentle breeze blew and a few strands of gray hair brushed past his eyes. Su Zimo pursed his lips and his gaze dimmed. He did not have much lifespan left. He had 700 years at most. At that moment, if he were to leave the Tao inheritance ground and return to Tianhuang mainland, he had a chance of entering the Dharma characteristic realm in one go. However, if that was the case, all the comprehensions and inspiration he gained over the years would most likely dissipate and he would have to start afresh. At that time, was he going to spend another 4,000 years? How many changes would happen in Tianhuang mainland after 4,000 years? He could not afford to wait. Neither could his old friends and kin. Furthermore, the difficulty he would face would only increase if he restarted his deduction. He had a feeling that if he were to leave this time round, he would never get the chance to deduce the martial Tao. Su Zimo glanced sideways at the 30-odd stone statues and said softly, "Seniors, don't worry. I'll stay here. Even if I fail, I won't let down your Tao hearts and hopes." He was already prepared to die with his green lotus true body. Su Zimo closed his eyes again and continued to deduce. Time was still flowing rapidly. Su Zimo's lifespan was decreasing. 600 years. 500 years. 400 years. The luster on his face was gone and it was filled with wrinkles, making him look extremely old. Even if his body was the green lotus true body, his blood chi was already starting to deteriorate at the moment and his hair and beard were white, emanating an aura of twilight within his body. Su Zimo did not get up still. Before long, he only had 200 years left. He was already 4,800 years old. All of a sudden, Su Zimo shuddered and suddenly opened his eyes. A bedazzling glint flashed through his initially cloudy eyes. Success. Many mysterious sutras reverberated in his mind, forming a Tao that became increasingly clear. At that moment, a mysterious power surrounded him. It was not spirit energy, dharmic powers, or divine powers. However, that power was still dissipating and had yet to materialize. Su Zimo was in no hurry to get up. He closed his eyes and continued to deduce. He was only at the initial mastery of the martial Tao and had many loopholes and flaws. He had to continue deducing and perfecting those loopholes. Time passed. Su Zimo's lifespan was almost up. Time was running out. Unknowingly, he only had 100 years left to his lifespan. To be fair, one was at the end of the road by the time their lifespan was less than 100 years. Under such circumstances, it was extremely dangerous for someone like him to spend so much effort to deduce the martial Tao. He could die at any moment. However, Su Zimo did not stop his deduction. Finally, when his lifespan was less than 50 years, he opened his eyes once more. Su Zimo stood up slowly and a sincere smile finally appeared on his old face. The mysterious power had already appeared beside him, forming gigantic golden words. There were a total of 81 of them and they surged with an unstoppable aura and will. That was the aura of the martial Tao. That was the will of the martial Tao. The martial Tao was about advancing courageously. It was about being true to one's heart and the ability to execute gratitude and hatred at will. The martial Tao was unyielding, a resisting boldness of millions of people. The deduction of the martial Tao itself was a manifestation of the martial Tao. Su Zimo's expression was emotional as he looked at the many golden words around him and murmured softly, "Go on, let all living beings in the world see this." 81 gigantic golden words soared into the skies as though they were sentient. The Tao inheritance ground was a world of its own and was isolated from the outside world. However, at that moment, the space could not stop the 81 golden words and it shattered, causing the world to tremble. 81 golden words descended upon the firmaments of Tianhuang mainland. At that moment, it did not matter if one was mortal or a cultivator. It did not matter if one was from the immortal, Buddhist or fiend sections. It did not matter if one was a demon or from the primordial 9 races. All the living beings of Tianhuang mainland noticed the 81 golden words above their heads. The entire world was shaken. What is this? Could it be a commotion caused by some extraordinary Mahayana patriarch? It seems to be from the Dao inheritance ground. Tianhuang mainland was in an uproar. Many mortals did not know what was going on and knelt down to pray in fear of impending trouble. I am desolate martial. After 5,000 years, I finally created half of the martial sutra. All living beings in the world are able to cultivate this and become immortals. Right then, an old voice sounded from midair. In the stone statue cemetery, Su Zimo merely whispered. However, his voice spread through the entire world with the augmentation of the 81 golden words. 100 Refinement Sect. Figures burst forth from the cave abode and descended in midair. Their leader was none other than mighty figure Extreme Fire of 100 Refinement Sect. This is. Mighty figure Extreme Fire had a shocked expression as he looked at the firmaments in disbelief and trembled. Could Zimo have successfully established his Tao? Ethereal Peak. The old immortal crane, Nian Qi, and many other cultivators of the sects appeared at the same time and looked up. Young master has succeeded. Nian Qi clenched her fists with a delighted expression. Great Zhou's palace. Ji Yaoxue and Xiaoning stood together emotionally. Pingyang town. Tao Yao stood in the courtyard and tilted his head. Blinking his large eyes, he pondered and said, in that case, young master is about to return? Who is desolate marshal? Many mortals of Pingyang town asked curiously. I heard that desolate marshal is second young master Su of our town. Ah, it's him. Is second young master Su asking us mortals to cultivate as well? Hurry, memorize it. Many mortals watched fixedly at the 81 golden words in midair. At the same time, the conjoint body mighty figures of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend super sects came out of seclusion one after another. In fact, even many half-martial ancestor experts appeared. Desolate martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial arts to all living beings. Could a junior truly have accomplished such an unprecedented act? Some people were shocked while others were doubtful. Enigma Palace. A slightly rotund cultivator danced with joy and shouted excitedly, "Old man, hurry and come out." Brother Su succeeded. Stop your fuss, I'm watching. In the void, a figure appeared and gradually materialized. The old man wore a Confucian crown and held a folding fan in his hands. With a grim expression, he looked at the golden words in the firmaments and said in a deep voice, if this half of the martial sutra is truly as desolate martial has described, it will be a supreme merit that will bring blessings to the masses and ensure their eternal existence. Chapter 12:15, 9 Transformations of the Martial Tao. Chapter 12:15, 9 Transformations of the Martial Tao. Although the 81 golden words looked extremely mysterious, even many conjoint body mighty figures and half-martial ancestor experts could not make out anything from them. Those with spirit roots can sense the spirit chi of heaven and earth before advancing to chi condensation, foundation establishment and form their golden cores. Su Zimo's aged voice continued ringing through Tianhuang mainland. Those words were common knowledge for cultivators. However, he was now saying it for the masses. Those without spirit roots cannot sense the spirit chi of heaven and earth and can only look for other methods. Actually, a human's body is a huge treasure with endless potential. The essence of the Martial Sutra is to refine one's body using secret skills and stimulate its potential to form a core. Although Su Zimo had a mortal body, he made use of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to condense a demon inner core. Be it immortal, demon, Buddhist or fiend cultivation, core formation was an insurmountable realm and was one of the most important ones as well. It was like a watershed. After forming a core, one's lifespan would increase to 500 years. At that moment it was not only the mortals in the world, even cultivators of many sects were listening to desolate martial impart his Tao regardless of their cultivation realms. The martial Tao uses secret skills to refine the body and there are a total of 9 transformations. Each transformation has a unique breathing method and body tempering technique that allows the body to transform and be reborn. I call it the 9 transformations of the martial Tao. Actually, this half of the Martial Sutra contained many secret skill sutras that contained the profoundness of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects as well as Su Zimo's own comprehension. However, his inspiration came from his demonic cultivation. It was as the mighty figure of Tomb's sect in the ancient battlefield had said, Su Zimo's existence was unprecedented. He cultivated the demon, immortal, Buddhist and fiend Taoists. That was the reason why he was able to create a Tao that belonged to him. First transformation of the martial Tao. 9 bulls 2 tigers. The moment he said that, 9 golden words appeared individually in the firmaments, shining with a bedazzling light. The 9 golden words seemed to transform into 9 little people that practiced 9 different actions in midair before coming to a stop. Those 9 words were the breathing secret skill of the first transformation. Those 9 actions were the body tempering secret skill of the first transformation. After attaining greater mastery of the first transformation, one would possess immense strength. Second transformation of the martial Tao, 5 Qi essence. The second transformation aimed to refine one's organs. The 5 organs of the human body could also be called the 5 great divine treasures and possessed unimaginable potential. By refining the 5 organs, one could condense the divine Qi of the 5 treasures and clear their 7 orifices. They would possess the amazing universal sight and hearing as well as receive an immense gain in strength. Even 5 horses would not be able to tear them apart. The organs refinement section of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness only began at the 5th section. However, Su Zimo pushed forward the refinement of one's organs in the martial Tao. As he said that, another 9 golden words appeared in the firmaments, shining with beams of light and displaying different stances. Third transformation of the martial Tao, bronze skin steel bones. This transformation focused on the skin and bones. At greater mastery, one would be invulnerable against weapons and fire and water. In the skies, 9 golden words shone once more, taking on human form and conjuring 9 body tempering secret skills. Fourth transformation of the martial Tao, undulating flexibility. At greater mastery of this transformation, one would be able to change their muscles, expand and contract their bones and tendons. Their appearances could be changed and they could be tall, strong or skinny. Fifth transformation of the martial Tao, lead mercury amalgam blood. The 5th transformation was marrow cleansing and blood swapping. The bloodline would be condensed powerfully and flow gradually through one's body like a lead mercury amalgam. Their bones would be like snow, flawless without any impurities. At greater mastery of this transformation, one would possess lead mercury amalgam blood. At perfected stage, it would be tsunami blood. However, it was not only for mortals. Even for cultivators, it was extremely difficult to cultivate to the tsunami blood realm. Furthermore, in the Martial Sutra, one would be able to advance to the next transformation upon cultivating to the lead mercury amalgam blood realm. 6th transformation of the martial Tao, blood Qi golden core. After refining their organs and swapping blood through their marrow, one's blood Qi would be robust and finally converge, forming a golden core of blood Qi in their dantian. They would officially advance to the golden core realm. Above the clouds, the 9 tiny golden figures practice 9 different styles before hugging their blood Qi eventually to condense a golden core. Good, good, good. Within Enigma Palace, the old man with the Confucian crown nodded repeatedly with a shocked expression. Even with his eyesight, it was difficult for him to comprehend the obscurities behind those actions in a short period of time. However, the old man was clear that if one cultivated the technique and had sufficient endowments, those mortals without spirit roots would definitely be able to form a core using this half of the Martial Sutra. After forming a core, all paths would lead to the same goal. No sect would reject the inclusion of a golden core. Although there was only half of the Martial Sutra, after any mortal cultivated to the 6th transformation of the martial Tao, they could join any sect to cultivate the spirit refinement techniques thereafter. One would break free from the shackles of a spirit root once their core was formed. Su Zimo's cultivation realm was only at the void reversion realm and it was already his limit to be able to deduce the cultivation techniques and secret skills required for core formation. Therefore, there was only half of the Martial Sutra. 7th transformation of the martial Tao, astral infusion. From then on, the difficulty of cultivation increased exponentially, and even if there were 10,000 people, there might not be a single person who could cultivate it successfully. Of course, if they succeeded in cultivation, their combat strength would increase tremendously. 8th transformation of the martial Tao, indestructible diamond. This transformation was even more terrifying. Although it was not beyond the realm of core formation, one's body would be indestructible like a diamond and possess shocking regeneration capabilities with an immensely strong bloodline. 9th transformations of the martial Tao, dragon elephant force. This was the final transformation of the martial Tao. At its peak, one's strength was comparable to a divine dragon and elephant. Even at the 9th transformation of the martial Tao, one was not beyond the core formation realm. How terrifying was it for a golden core to possess the power of the divine dragon and elephant? The final 9 golden words were displayed in midair and froze slowly. The 81 golden words transformed into 81 small golden figures that stood in midair. They shone with a brilliance that seemed eternal. At that point, Su Zimo paused and took a deep breath before continuing. The later 3 transformations of the 9 transformations are extremely difficult and cannot be forced. If you want to continue cultivating, it would suffice just to cultivate to the 6th transformation to condense an essence spirit. Unbelievable. In 100 Refinement Sect, Mighty Figure Extreme Fire was shocked and said slowly, "Even I feel that the power contained in this half of the Martial Sutra is mysterious, and I look forward to it. If I can cultivate again, I'll definitely try to cultivate this martial Tao. The merit of creating this is comparable to the eternal human emperor." Another conjoint body Mighty Figure lamented. Mighty Figure Extreme Fire said, "The rarest thing is that Zimo did not hide anything at all and spread this half of the Martial Sutra to the entire world. Even I can't compare to his magnanimity." In the cultivation world, nobody would casually impart any cultivation techniques or insights they had. However, this half of the Martial Sutra that Su Zimo spent 5,000 years to tirelessly deduce, he imparted it without holding anything back at all. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial arts to all living beings. Desolate Martial imparted his Tao and brought blessings to the entire world. Chapter 12:16, Fruit of the Martial Tao. Chapter 12:16, Fruit of the Martial Tao. The path of the martial Tao was long and Su Zimo merely deduced the beginning. However, the passing of this half of the Martial Sutra was equivalent to completing the grand wish he made back then. For all living beings in the world, as long as they were willing to, they could cultivate the Martial Sutra. After forming a core, they could choose according to their heart, cultivating immortal, Buddhist or fiend cultivation. All living beings could cultivate. This was equivalent to giving everyone a chance to change their fates. Against cultivators, demon beasts and calamities, even the most ordinary mortals would be able to protect themselves and would no longer be at the mercy of others. "Bro, did you see that?" In the stone statue cemetery, Su Zimo murmured softly. His old face had a complicated expression. There were emotions, regrets and longing. Sigh. He sighed deeply. It's time to leave. He had 50 more years to live. That bit of lifespan was insignificant for void reversions who had 5,000 years of lifespan. The flame of life in his body could extinguish at any moment. Su Zimo had no confidence of advancing to the Dharma characteristic realm in that condition. Under normal circumstances, breaking through a major cultivation realm as such was extremely difficult. Only when a cultivator's blood chi was strong and their entire life was at its peak could they succeed in breaking through. For void reversions, once they were over 4,000 years old, they were considered to be in their later years, let alone someone with only 50 years of lifespan remaining. There were extremely few people who could break through to the Dharma characteristic realm after 4,000 years old. Su Zimo was already 4,950 years old and was only hanging on by a thread. Right then, the 81 golden figures in the skies transformed into streaks of golden light and returned to the stone statue cemetery, gathering before Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, all 81 of them fused together to form a palm-sized golden ball that shone with a bedazzling light. What is this? Su Zimo was momentarily stunned. He actually had a bloodline connection to the golden ball. Could that be a Tao fruit? A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind as he recalled some of the records he had read in the ancient books at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Legend has it that before passing away, some accomplished monks would condense their lifetime's worth of cultivation essence into Tao fruits and leave them in the form of relics for fated people. That was an extremely high realm. Even Mahayana patriarchs could not do it, let alone Su Zimo. What was even stranger was that there was a faint fluctuation of life coming from the golden fruit that was different from the Tao fruits in the legends. In reality, Su Zimo's guess was not wrong. That golden fruit was the fruit of the martial Tao. Ordinary Tao fruits contained the essence of a cultivator's cultivation and contained many legacy secret skills and insights. It was impossible for those Tao fruits to possess any fluctuations of life. However, Su Zimo's situation was different. That Tao fruit did not condense the essence of his cultivation, but the profoundness of the martial Tao. Not only that, the Tao fruit received the augmentation of a vow that contained the will of the martial Tao as well as the beliefs of the masses. The culmination of those various powers produced a martial Tao fruit filled with the vibrancy of life. This was an unprecedented phenomenon even in the 3,000 worlds, let alone Tianhuang mainland. This martial Tao fruit could be considered as an anomaly beyond the three realms and was not part of the five elements. It was unprecedented. Su Zimo looked at the golden fruit before him and pondered for a long time. Unable to make out anything, he put it away in his storage bag. Thereafter, Su Zimo dragged his aged body and walked out of the cemetery step by step. Outside the Three Tribulations domain, many cultivators were gathered there, discussing fervently. Desolate Martial should have deduced the martial Tao in this Tao inheritance ground, right? It should be. This dimensional tear is still around. Strange, it's less than 15 years since the battle between Desolate Martial and Xianyu. Why would Desolate Martial say that he has spent close to 5,000 years? Those cultivators had not only come out of curiosity, but also because of the orders of their sects. Among them were cultivators from the 10 upper sects and aristocratic families of the North region. Right now, Su Zimo was definitely an important figure in the entire cultivation world, especially in the North region. Back then, after the battle with Xianyu, he was encircled by many conjoint body mighty figures, but he managed to escape unscathed. The death of 6 mighty figures without exception was still a mystery among the upper sects. For sects and factions such as Dragon Tiger Sect and Dark Ghost Sect who had offended Su Zimo in the past, they were even more concerned about Su Zimo's situation and activity out of guilt. As the crowd discussed, a figure gradually appeared in the Three Tribulations domain. Under the Yin wind, he staggered as though he could fall at any moment. The clamor gradually quietened down. All the cultivators watched fixedly. Before long, the figure gradually became clear and had already exited the Three Tribulations domain. It was an old man with white hair and a face filled with wrinkles. His eyes had turned cloudy and his blood qi was weak. The old man's spine was slightly bent and he was hunched. After close to 5,000 years, that skinny and aged body could no longer support the worn green robes on his body. The cultivators were stunned and opened their mouths slightly. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. This was Tao being Desolate Martial? Was this the once invincible monster incarnate who killed many titular disciples here and looked down on the world? Was this the peerless paragon that could be reborn after being killed by a half-martial ancestor expert? None of the cultivators could see the image of Su Zimo anymore. The sharpness, drive and dominance of the past seemed to have vanished without a trace after 5,000 years. The only thing that was familiar about the old man was his green robes. All the cultivators present could tell with a single sweep of their spirit consciousness that Su Zimo was at the end of his lifespan and was on the brink of death. Ha 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 ha. Finally, some cultivators could not help but burst into laughter. Desolate Martial, oh Desolate Martial, you were once domineering and arrogant. To think that this day would come for you. This is karma. A series of sarcastic remarks sounded from the crowd. All these years, these so-called paragons were suppressed too badly by Su Zimo. That name had already become a nightmare for many cultivators that they could not forget. The titular disciples of the various super sects were killed by Su Zimo single-handedly. As long as Su Zimo was alive, they would always be beneath him. Sigh, what a pity. A cultivator shook his head gently and lamented, to think that even a monster incarnate like Desolate Marshal wouldn't be able to escape the sands of time. I wonder what he experienced to end up with such an outcome. To impart martial arts to all living beings is something that defies the heavens and is extremely difficult. I'm sure that Desolate Marshal has expended all his effort for the half-martial sutra. Some people gloated, some lamented, and some watched coldly from the sidelines. The behavior of humans no longer caused any stirs in Su Zimo's heart. He smiled faintly and arrived before the dimensional tear. Without looking at everyone, he strode in and vanished. Chapter 12:17, Return. Chapter 12:17, Return. The news of Su Zimo's appearance in the Dao inheritance ground spread through the entire cultivation world rapidly. In the depths of a bamboo forest, there was a simple wooden house. It's a pity that my brother Su had to exhaust his lifespan in order to establish the martial Dao and change the fates of the living beings in the world. At the entrance of the wooden house, a man with a cold expression leaned against the wall and shook his head gently, sighing. I wonder if it was all worth it in the end. From the wooden house, a white-bloused woman walked out with a steaming bowl of medicine and handed it to the man. The man received it naturally. The white-bloused woman sat beside the man and looked at his face with a pitiable expression, saying somewhat reproachfully, "And you're talking about him? Aren't you the same? What about me?" The man asked in surprise. The white-bloused woman replied, "You gave me the 9 revolutions soul return elixir. However, your own essence spirit injuries have yet to recover." She pursed her lips after a momentary pause and asked, "Was it worth it?" Haha. The man laughed and drank the medicine in the bowl. "Of course it's worth it. Someone has been taking care of me all these years and I don't even have to return to the sect." "You." The white-bloused woman blushed and thumped the man on the shoulder with an embarrassed expression. However, immediately after, she looked worried and sighed gently. Essence spirit injuries are the most difficult to heal. I wondered if there's any solution. It's best if there isn't any. The man mumbled. Nonsense. The white-bloused woman frowned. Your cultivation can't advance and your combat strength will be greatly reduced if your essence spirit's injuries can't heal completely. How can that do? Once my essence spirit injuries heal, you'll head back, right? The man asked in a seemingly casual manner. The white-bloused woman smiled with a gentle look in her eyes. To think that this was what the man was worried about. Leaning against the man gently, she murmured, "Don't worry. The so-called immortal sects and the people there have completely disappointed me. I'll never return again." 100 Refinement Sect. Mighty Figure Extreme Fire stood at the entrance of the hall and listened to the news from his disciples for a long time in silence. "Grandmaster, my condolences." Dao Lord Scarlet Star said, "Uncle Master left behind the legacy of the martial Dao. Even if he dies in meditation, it'll be a good ending without any regrets." Mighty Figure Extreme Fire was silent. Although he had witnessed the deaths of countless people, he still felt a sense of sadness when he heard that Su Zimo's lifespan was almost up. Dragon Tiger Sect. What? The sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect stood up suddenly and his heart skipped a beat. His gaze intensified as he glared at a disciple below and asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure that Desolate Marshal only has 50 years left to live?" "It's absolutely true." The Dragon Tiger Sect cultivator nodded. "It's not just me. Many cultivators outside the 3 Tribulations domain detected it as well. There's absolutely no mistake. In that case, Desolate Marshal won't live for long?" The sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect sat back slowly with a skeptical expression. Ever since the annihilation of the 6 conjoint body mighty figures more than 10 years ago, the name Desolate Marshal had always rattled him and he could not sleep well. He was afraid that one day, Desolate Marshal would suddenly enter the Dharma characteristic realm and come knocking. He had even dreamed of such a scene over the years. According to the Grand Elder of the sect, if Desolate Marshal were to advance to the Dharma characteristic realm, no one in the sect would be able to defend against the latter. But now, the sudden news of Desolate Marshal's exhausting lifespan after just more than 10 years left the sect master of Dragon Tiger sect in skepticism. This great foe who caused him restless nights was about to die. Sect master. The cultivator below pondered for a moment and asked, could Desolate Marshal be using some trick to confuse us? There's no need for that. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect shook his head. After a brief pause, he continued, however, Desolate Marshal isn't dead yet. He still has 50 years of lifespan left. This means that he still has a chance to enter the Dharma characteristic realm. If he enters the Dharma characteristic realm and his lifespan extends to 10,000 years, he will be reborn. That's impossible. An elder beside the sect master of Dragon Tiger sect shook his head. Even if he has 500 years left, it'll be difficult for him to break through a major cultivation realm, let alone the fact that he only has 50 years left. Even so, I'm still worried. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect narrowed his eyes and said sternly, after all, he's Desolate Marshal, the one who established the martial Tao. It's not surprising for anything to happen to him. What are your plans? The sect elder asked. Go and gather more information and see what Desolate Marshal's next move is. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect said, if there's a chance, kill him. He still has 50 years of lifespan left and we can't give him any chances. Sect master, aren't you afraid of offending the Mahayana patriarch behind him? The sect elder frowned. Back then, there was already bad blood after the 6 conjoint body mighty figures tried to kill Desolate Marshal. If you attack again, there's probably no room for negotiation between us and Desolate Marshal anymore. Humph. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect sneered, Elder son, you're too cowardly. I'll attack in a completely justifiable manner this time round. Even the Mahayana patriarch behind Desolate Marshal won't be able to vent his anger on me. Desolate Marshal is still at the Void Reversion Realm right now. If I send cultivators of the sect at the Void Reversion Realm to challenge him openly, that won't be bullying. The sect elder shook his head in silence. Although he was an elder of Dragon Tiger sect, he thought to himself that it was vicious. Although Desolate Marshal was indeed at the Void Reversion Realm, he was already 4,950 years old and his lifespan was almost up. His blood chi was deteriorating and he did not have much combat strength. Right now, any random void reversion could most probably kill him. This was a blatant plot. That Desolate Marshal is at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley and probably won't come out again with another 50 years to his lifespan. The elder of Dragon Tiger sect shook his head. I'm afraid you won't stand a chance even if you harbor such intentions. I won't force things. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect waved it off. If there's no chance, forget it. I can't possibly head to the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley to kill. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Su Zimo returned to the familiar courtyard. Monk Yuan Bei had been waiting there for a long time. The two old men exchanged glances. Suddenly, Su Zimo smiled. He looked slightly worse than Monk Yuan Bei. This proved that at the very least, Monk Yuan Bei had more than 50 years to live. However, Monk Yuan Bei could not return Su Zimo's smile. You must be tired. Go and have a good sleep. Monk Yuan Bei sighed gently. All right. Su Zimo nodded in agreement. He had not rested for all these years. Even if he was extremely exhausted, he merely took a nap during his deduction in the stone statue cemetery. Now that he was back at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, he could finally have a good night's sleep. Su Zimo entered the main hall and collapsed on the ground, breathing steadily. Monk Yuan Bei turned around and returned to the cemetery in the backyard. The red-headed ghost grinned with a smug expression. That's fate. Once that lad's green lotus true body dies along with him, he'll only be someone of the dragon race from this day forth. Chapter 12:18, Martial Tao True Body. Chapter 12:18, Martial Tao True Body. The red-headed ghost did not care if the green lotus true body died for the Tao. Everything was fine as long as the dragon true body was fine. However, Monk Yuan Bei sighed internally with a look of pity. Su Zimo was a human after all. The death of his green lotus true body would mean that the last traces of his connection to the human race would vanish as well. His essence, spirit, bloodline and soul would no longer belong to the human race. Monk Yuan Bei could not bear it. However, even with his capabilities, he could not save Su Zimo. With less than 50 years of lifespan remaining, his blood qi was weak, his body would age and his essence spirit would wither. It was impossible for him to break through to the Dharma characteristic realm. Zimo can pass down his Tao to all living beings. Even if his green lotus true body is sacrificed for the Tao, it will remain eternal, Monk Yuan Bei said. The red-headed ghost nodded. I do admire him for that. The fact that he's able to create the martial Tao given his cultivation and allow all mortals of the human race to cultivate is an unimaginable merit for the human race. That half of the martial sutra alone is enough for him to match the human emperor. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. Su Zimo slept for 10 days in the grand hall of the old temple before waking up. He was too tired after 5,000 years of deduction. If not for some obsession in his heart, there was a high chance that he would have fallen asleep and never woke up. The old monk was waiting beside Su Zimo. When he saw Su Zimo awake, he asked with a kind expression, Zimo, what are your plans from now on? I've got to leave. Su Zimo said softly, I'm going to return to Pingyang town. His lifespan was almost up. If he could not break through, it would be best if his green lotus true body was buried in his courtyard in Pingyang town beside his older brother, Su Hong. Monk Yuan Bei could read Su Zimo's mind and sighed internally. A fox dies in its hole and a leaf lands at its roots. This might be the best outcome for Su Zimo upon returning to Pingyang town. Don't worry, master, I haven't given up. Sensing the sadness in Monk Yuan Bei's heart, Su Zimo smiled gently. I still have a chance to break through in the remaining 50 years. For anyone else, it was impossible for them to break through with the remaining 50 years of lifespan. However, that was not impossible for Su Zimo. That was because after 5,000 years, he had accumulated more than 30 top-secret inheritances of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects. There was also the creation lotus platform in his consciousness. Although Su Zimo's blood qi was deteriorating and his body was aging, his essence spirit did not wither under the nourishment of the creation lotus platform. His essence spirit could still sense heaven and earth. Those were his backing. Of course, his lifespan was still too short and Su Zimo had no confidence of breaking through either. That was the reason why he chose to return to Pingyang town. It would naturally be best if he could succeed. However, if he failed, it could be considered as returning to his hometown. He still had his dragon true body and there was still a chance for him to meet Dai Yu. It was not a bad outcome as well. Furthermore, Tao Yao was still waiting for him in Pingyang town. Right then, Su Zimo's heart stirred. As though he sensed something, he touched his storage bag and took out a golden fruit. This is... Monk Yuan Bei focused his gaze. The golden fruit gave off a mysterious aura that even he could not identify. He sighed gently. What was even stranger was that there was a life force surging out from the golden fruit. It was increasingly clear and intense, as though it could gush out at any moment. Su Zimo's eyes widened as well. It felt as though something was about to be born from the golden fruit. Crack. 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 All of a sudden, cracks appeared on the surface of the golden fruit. There was a thud, as though something was knocking on the shell of the fruit. Before long, many shards fell off and a pink and tender infant gradually appeared. Lying in Su Zimo's palm, it clenched its fists and waved its arms. Su Zimo and Monk Yuanbei were stunned. What was going on here? Su Zimo frowned in deep thought and a guess gradually formed in his mind. As for Monk Yuanbei, he had a shocked expression and glared at the infant's moving arms for a moment. The shock in his eyes intensified. How was that possible? He was dumbfounded when he realized that the infant's arms were not flaying wildly. Its tender arms moved with an obscure trajectory, as though they could trigger the most mysterious power in the world. Those actions looked familiar. Monk Yuanbei pondered for a moment and his heart skipped a beat. Those motions and postures were secret body tempering techniques that Su Zimo had created in the Martial Sutra. Su Zimo also vaguely realized that this infant might be a life form that was born after the martial Tao fruit gained sentience. At the same time, Su Zimo was the origin of the martial Tao fruit itself. The moment that thought crossed his mind, the infant stopped waving its arms and opened its eyes. At that moment, an extremely mysterious connection was formed between Su Zimo and the infant. The connection was no different from the one between the green lotus true body and the dragon true body. Ordinary Tao fruits would not gain sentience nor would they possess any signs of life. As for the martial Tao fruit, it was augmented by grand wishes, martial intent and the faith of all living beings. By chance, it gave birth to a spirit intellect and life itself. This infant that was born from the martial Tao was Su Zimo as well. Su Zimo was elated. Initially, he had some regrets after deducing the martial Tao and creating half of the Martial Sutra. After all, be it the green lotus true body or the dragon true body, it was extremely difficult for them to cultivate to this stage. Their Tao foundations were firm and there was no way for him to cripple their cultivations to cultivate anew. In other words, although Su Zimo was the one who founded the martial Tao, he did not have the chance to cultivate it. Furthermore, he had already resolved the problem of mortals without spirit roots not being able to cultivate after deducing half of the Martial Sutra. Yet, he would no longer have the energy to continue deducing from no one. Now that he had this infant, all his problems were resolved. That infant was born because of the martial Tao and was born for the martial Tao. The infant's cultivation path was completely blank and he could cultivate the martial Tao and continue to deduce the martial Tao after the 9 transformations. Similar to the dragon true body and green lotus true body, the infant was a martial Tao true body. To a certain extent, the infant was the true Su Zimo. That was because the infant inherited his ambitions, determination, pride, Tao heart and even his martial Tao. Be it the dragon true body or the green lotus true body, in truth, both had already deviated from the true Su Zimo by this point of their cultivations. The dragon true body was not a human, but a dragon. The green lotus true body was also a body made from the stem and leaves of the lotus. None of them could be considered as Su Zimo. Prior to this, it was difficult for Su Zimo to determine which of the 2 true bodies was his true self. That was the reason why he had not established either as the prime body. The moment he caught sight of the infant, Su Zimo no longer hesitated. This martial Tao true body was him. Among the 3 true bodies, the martial Tao true body was his prime body. His prime body would break free from the restraints of the dragon true body and green lotus true body completely and deduce his own Tao, creating an unprecedented glory. Even Dai Yu could not predict Su Zimo's future from this point on. Chapter 12:19, Final Arrangements. Chapter 12:19, Final Arrangements. When he sensed the commotion in the hall, the red-headed ghost could not help but run over. Where did this child come from? He widened his eyes and sized up Monk Yuanbei and Su Zimo, muttering. He was only gone for a short while, how did a child appear out of nowhere from these 2 old men? A chill ran down the red-headed ghost's spine and he shook his head hurriedly, casting that thought away. Although the prime body was only a newborn baby, it did not cry or shout. Instead, It watched Monk Yuanbei and the red-headed ghost silently without any fear through its jet-black eyes. Pausing for a moment, it grabbed the broken skin of the golden fruit and stuffed it into its mouth. The broken fruit skin was a great tonic as well. When the red-headed ghost saw that, he could not help but click his tongue in wonder. He had lived for so long, but he had never encountered such a situation. As he looked at the infant, he felt that he was not facing a child, but a mature and unfathomable existence. How could that be? On the other side, Monk Yuanbei's expression changed slightly as he murmured. "What's wrong?" the red-headed ghost asked. Monk Yuanbei pointed at the prime body and said sternly, "I can't read that infant's mind at all." Monk Yuanbei was a Mahayana patriarch and cultivated the great divine power of the Buddhist monasteries, heart-peering, allowing him to read the minds of others with ease. As long as Monk Yuanbei released that divine power, there would be no secret against him. However, when Monk Yuanbei released his heart-peering earlier on to check out what the infant was made of, he realized that he could not read the infant's mind at all. As a Mahayana patriarch, he could not even see through an infant. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar. Su Zimo smiled without replying. The existence of the prime body was a variable. It was beyond the 3 realms and 5 elements. Even the patriarch of Enigma Palace who specialized in divination would not be able to see through the prime body, let alone Monk Yuanbei's heart-peering. Nobody could divine the fate of the prime body. With the existence of his prime body, it would not be a loss for Su Zimo even if his green lotus true body died for the Tao. Of course, he would not give up. If his green lotus true body could enter the Dharma characteristic realm, the benefits of his deduction of the martial Tao would be immense. Who is that infant? The red-headed ghost could not help but ask. He is me. Su Zimo smiled gently. Ah. The red-headed ghost was stunned. It's like the green lotus true body and the existence of the dragon true body. This infant is my martial Tao true body, Su Zimo explained simply. Monk Yuanbei and the red-headed ghost were in deep thought. Legend has it that among the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects of the upper world, there were top-tier cloning techniques such as the 3 pures of the immortal sects, the 3 corpses of the fiend sects, the past, present and future bodies of the Buddhist monasteries. But now, by chance, Su Zimo managed to deduce 3 true bodies exclusive to him. How about leaving this child here to accompany us? The red-headed ghost could not help but say, I'm almost going to throw up looking at this old monk all day. This child can accompany me instead. Sure. Su Zimo agreed readily. Although his prime body was the martial Tao true body, it was in the form of an infant and could not protect itself. It was the best choice to stay at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley to cultivate with the protection of Monk Yuanbei and the red-headed ghost. Zimo, you're still going back? Monk Yuanbei asked. Yes. Su Zimo nodded. Take care. Yuanbei did not say much and merely reminded. Su Zimo laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm almost at the end of my lifespan. Even those great enemies of the past won't be bothered to attack me, right? With that said, Su Zimo bowed deeply to Monk Yuanbei and the red-headed ghost, leaving his prime body behind before turning to leave. After returning to the North region, he did not have much time and did not bid farewell to any old friends. He summoned his spirit vessel and sped towards Pingyang town. Thankfully, his essence spirit did not wither under the nourishment of the creation lotus platform. Otherwise, controlling the spirit vessel for such a long time would consume his life rapidly. This day, a gray-haired old man in green arrived at Pingyang town. Standing in front of Pingyang town, the old man gazed at the town and murmured emotionally, Big brother, I'm back. Grandpa, I'm sorry. A child who ran out of Pingyang town bumped into Su Zimo's embrace and bowed hurriedly, apologizing with a blushed face. No worries. Su Zimo smiled gently. The child seemed to feel guilty as he pointed to the town and whispered, Grandpa, let me tell you a secret. There's a peach blossom immortal in Pingyang town. You can stay in the town for a period of time. If you're lucky and bump into the peach blossom immortal, you can live for dozens of years after eating the peach he gives you. Thank you. Su Zimo smiled, rubbed the child's forehead and stepped into Pingyang town. Some of the Pingyang town elders looked at Su Zimo's back view and felt that it was familiar. However, they shook their heads and denied it immediately. When Su Zimo arrived at the courtyard, a tender voice hollered before he could enter. Who are you? A tender child suddenly appeared and blocked in front of Su Zimo, looking at him angrily. No one is allowed in here. Su Zimo remained silent and merely smiled at the boy. Even after more than 10 years, Tao Yao still looked like a child without any changes. Why you are, young master? Tao Yao widened his eyes in shock. Thereafter, Tao Yao sniffed and no longer had any doubts. Instantly, his eyes reddened and he sobbed. Young master, you're back. I'm so happy. Be but your lifespan. Tao Yao hurriedly took out a huge bunch of peaches from his storage bag and placed them all in Su Zimo's embrace, urging repeatedly, young master, eat. Eat them all. Tao Yao's peaches could increase a mortal's lifespan by dozens of years. However, they were of little use to Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not decline and took over the peaches. He took a huge bite and praised, not bad. Tao Yao said nothing and merely sobbed. He could sense Su Zimo's twilight aura. He was afraid that he would never see Su Zimo again. I am fine. Su Zimo wiped away the tears on Tao Yao's face and said gently, I'm going to give you a mission. Tell me, young master. Tao Yao pursed his lips and nodded vigorously. Su Zimo said, I want to cultivate here and prepare for my final breakthrough. I must not be disturbed during this period of time and you must guard me here. All right. Tao Yao's expression was resolute. I'll definitely not let anyone disturb you. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before saying, if I fail in my breakthrough and my lifespan is up, you don't have to feel sad. Just bury me in this courtyard. To be fair, even he was not confident of entering the Dharma characteristic realm. He had to prepare for his final arrangements. You won't die, young master. Tao Yao cried again and shook his head fervently. Chapter 1220, Tao Yao's Fury. Chapter 1220, Tao Yao's Fury. Dragon Tiger Sect. Master, I received definite news that Desolate Marshal has already left the Dragon Burial Valley and returned to Pingyang Town. He hasn't appeared since. A tall disciple said in a deep voice. The sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect sat on a high seat and nodded slightly with a cold glint in his eyes. An elder said in a deep voice, in that case, Desolate Marshal must have sensed that his lifespan was about to end and decided to return to his roots. There's no need for the sect master to deal with a person who's about to die. Desolate Marshal will always remain a huge problem to the Dragon Tiger Sect as long as he's not dead. The sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect had a sharp gaze. Previously, our sect participated in the fight between the dynasties and attacked Ethereal Peak. The mighty figure of our sect even tried to kill Desolate Marshal. How can he let things go after these grudges were sowed? I won't be at ease unless I see Desolate Marshal die with my own eyes. The elder wanted to continue persuading. However, he saw that the sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect was resolute and seemed to have made up his mind. He sighed internally and shook his head in silence. What about Pingyang Town? The sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect asked again. No. The tall disciple said, I loitered around there for a long time but there are only mortals in the town. Although their lifespans are longer, none of them cultivated before. Oh, there are many peach blossom trees surrounding the town as well. In other words, Desolate Marshal doesn't have anyone protecting him? The sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect narrowed his eyes and murmured. After pondering for a moment, the sect master of Dragon Tiger Sect looked at the tall disciple below and ordered decisively, Tianjia, you're my eldest disciple. You've joined my sect for many years and are the number one of the void reversion realm in the sect. I'll leave this heavy responsibility to you. Understood. The disciple named Tianzhe replied in a deep voice. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect said, choose another 10 void reversion disciples with extraordinary combat strength to accompany you. You must not lose this time round. Shall I infiltrate Pingyang town and wait for an opportunity to strike? Tianzhe asked. The sect master of Dragon Tiger sect sneered coldly and shook his head. There's no need for you to hide your tracks. Head over straight and say that you're visiting Dao being Desolate Marshal and want to spar with him. Desolate Marshal is a prideful person with a sharp edge. Up till this point of his cultivation, he has never been defeated. Even if he's in his twilight years, he won't fear you and will definitely accept the challenge and fight you. Tianzhe understood and said, at that time, I can kill him openly. That's right. A killing intent flashed through the sect master of Dragon Tiger sect's eyes as he continued, if the situation doesn't seem right, all of you will gang up and kill him. Pausing for a moment, he continued indifferently, if you can kill Desolate Marshal, all his treasures will belong to you. Tianzhe's eyes lit up. After Desolate Marshal imparted the Tao, the mortal world was shaken and became extraordinarily lively. All living beings in the world wanted to attain immortality. Who wouldn't want to live forever? However, most mortals did not have the chance or qualifications to become immortals. But now, with such an opportunity placed before them, who wouldn't be tempted? Almost every mortal would attempt to cultivate the martial Tao. However, although the martial Sutra was the same, everyone had different endowments and different levels of comprehension. Some mortals could comprehend the obscurities within. However, some mortals could only comprehend the basics. There were also many mortals who did not understand. It was the same in Pingyang town. Be it men, women, old or young, all of them tried to cultivate the martial Sutra. Unexpectedly, it was much easier for the mortals in the town to cultivate the martial Sutra and they required less effort. This day, 11 uninvited guests arrived outside Pingyang town. Those cultivators had powerful auras and did not hide their tracks. Wearing the robes of Dragon Tiger sect, their leader was a burly man. It was Dao being Tianzhe of Dragon Tiger sect. Under Tianzhe's lead, 10 void reversions strode towards Pingyang town. Before they arrived at the town, the peach blossom branches intertwined and stopped them as though they were alive. Everyone, please return. Entry and exit to Pingyang town is forbidden during this period of time. A slightly tender voice sounded. Tianzhe sneered internally and ignored that voice. Instead, he said loudly, I'm Dao being Tianzhe of Dragon Tiger sect. I've long heard of Desolate Marshal's great name. I'm here specially to visit. Please accept my visit, Desolate Marshal. What are you shouting for? With a whoosh, a boy appeared at the entrance of the town, frowning slightly and looking at Tianzhe and the others somewhat angrily. Kid, who are you? A void reversion asked with a grin. I'm Tao Yao and I serve my young master. The boy replied seriously. Although Tao Yao did not say who his young master was, Tianzhe and the others could guess. Tianzhe grinned. Kid, hurry back and inform your young master that I'm here to visit. He does not welcome any guests right now. Everyone, please return. Tao Yao cupped his fists politely still. The smile on Tianzhe's face widened. The fact that Desolate Marshal was unwilling to meet them was further proof that he did not have much lifespan remaining. He had absolute confidence of killing a dying man. Tianzhe's expression darkened as killing intent seeped out. He said sinisterly, Kid, you can't make the decision for this matter. If you dare stand in our way, don't blame us for being impolite. Initially, he thought that the boy would definitely be scared out of his wits if he revealed any bit of ferocity after his threat. Unexpectedly, Tao Yao did not show the slightest bit of fear. Instead, his expression turned stiff. You guys wish to harm my young master? Tao Yao was inexperienced in the ways of the world and was indeed pure and kind. However, he was no fool. Senior brother, why are you getting entangled with a kid like him? A void reversion strode forward and reached out for Tao Yao's throat. We can just kill a kid like this with ease. You guys are truly up to no good. Tao Yao looked at the void reversion's extended palm and suddenly attacked without warning. His seemingly skinny arm suddenly rested on the void reversion's arm. A coil and a tremble. Crack. 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 The jarring sound of bones cracking could be heard. Right in front of Tianjie and the others, the void reversion's arm was snapped and more than half the bones in his arm were shattered. The void reversion only reacted after a brief pause. His expression was stiff as cold sweat poured down instantly. Ah! The person let out a tragic cry. Everyone, watch out. This kid has cultivated into a demon and is a fiend demon. Tianjie cursed, damn it, I misjudged him. Leave quickly or don't blame me for being nasty. Tao Yao warned seriously. If it was Monkey and the others, they would have killed this group of people without a second word. However, Tao Yao was different. His hands had not been tainted by blood nor had he killed any living being. Right now, snapping the arm of the void reversion was the most severe move he had ever made. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.